And we're live.
You're on camera. You know that was on.
We will call the order of the June 5th, 2025 general business meeting of the Kennedy County Board of Supervisors. We will start with the saying pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, as I've been trying to do, I want to take a moment to appreciate where we are, who we are, and how we got here, making sure that we are appreciative and thankful for those who helped us get here, and that we take a moment to have grace and gratitude for every day. So we just have a moment for that, please. All right, thank you. With that, we can, done number one, additions, deletions to the agenda. I don't think that we have any, right? We're ready to go. With that, we can move to the minutes and financials. I'll make a motion to dispense with the reading of the meeting minutes from the general business meeting held on May 1st, 2025. Adopt them as presented and authorize the payment of the bills for the month of May in the amount of $4,379,730.22. Is there a second for that?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments or concerns?
For me.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
You did.
I just did.
Okay. I think the financial, sorry.
I'm not listening.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we like to talk amongst ourselves. Presentations. Doesn't look like we have any of those.
Combined.
Yeah, little one.
Small.
Introduce it.
Right, it's on my agenda, is discussions and updates, but sure.
It's actually a presentation.
I know, and it says presentation.
Well, you could maybe consider a discussion and update. PFM was here to discuss the bond issue. They were here in May and August of last year. Along the way, the board had authorized them to move forward and lay the groundwork for a bond issue. Also, in September of last year, we engaged Eckhart Siemens as bond counsel, and they are also here tonight. So they will present to you.
I think you got a little gray since last.
Maybe a little bit.
I just had a high school graduate, so.
So Jamie for PFM
Just kidding.
and Laura from Eckhart Siemens, and it was also here from the underwriting company. And I'll give it to Jamie.
Well, yeah, thanks for the history of the time. I guess I've been here a few times over the last year or so, and this is obviously a very important set of plans and projects that the township has been considering. Obviously, we broke ground on the Lifestyle Community Center a few months ago. It sounds like things are moving along. We have been looking at, for purposes of discussion, the concept of funding a portion of this project utilizing the capital markets. So my firm at PFM served as a fiduciary for the township, and because of the various steps associated with getting to the public markets, there are things that just need to happen. And we've taken probably about 80% of the administrative steps at this point in time. Tonight's conversation is about the legal ramifications or process that goes along with providing for the flexibility for the township to move forward with a capital financing through a municipal bond issuance. Why we're talking about this tonight is really to give us as a finance team and you as the township all the flexibilities to enter the public markets to access funds to do the projects that you intend to work on over the next few years. Obviously, the one that's driven this has been the Lifestyle Community Center, but obviously you've done facility studies and other things. So the process that we went through is essentially doing what is called a reimbursement resolution, which happened in November, which authorized the ability for the township to access the proceeds of public bonds to reimburse your accounts if you choose to. And that was for a $50 million reimbursement resolution. That's for tax purposes. So that was step number one for flexibility. Prior to that, of course, was the authorization to just allow us to kind of get things together. There was no legal or formal approvals, but we did a fair amount at this point in time. You can see more people here that are part of this team. what we've now gotten to a point of is we have the market as is. There is a bond market that's been, of course, moving up and down. We have a variability that is associated with that. And what we want to have is the ability to access that capital markets when the time comes and what makes most sense. And I'm going to talk about some of those rationales right, a little bit later, but I'm going to touch on the presentation just shortly. I'm happy to answer questions over the course of time, but I want to make sure that everyone understands this has been a long, planning stage, and we want to make sure that you have the funds necessary to do what you need to do for both the short-term project, which is the Lifestyle Community Center, and any future long-term projects for cash flow purposes. We're going to be in a good financial position. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And when we're ready to do the balance, we'll do the balance. Okay? Turn to the next page, please. Similar to what I've shown in the past, if you want to scroll to the bottom of this page, I like to use this as a basis. This is, no one likes graphs and charts, but this is at least a way for you to see what the interest rate environment's been about over the last year or so. And what's really important here is to see some of the ups and downs that we've seen specifically in the last 6 months. And the big spike you'll notice happened in the kind of the April range. And that was exactly the date when the tariffs got added to the world that we live in. So there was a humongous change in variability in the public markets. We know that the financial stock market moves all over the place. They're not going to retire for the next decade or so because of that. But needless to say, you can notice that it did go down. And that down number came from when the tariffs were adjusted. And one of the reasons for that is there became some stability in the concepts of what we think long-term rates would look like. And more importantly, it gave all of the people in this room that are in the finance world some opportunity to think about what the long-term implications are for access to capital markets. In our position as independent financial advisors, we've been recommending to our clients that have capital needs to proceed with the process if they want to access the markets, to get it done before July 10th. And that is essentially the expectation where the tariffs may get adjusted again, and you don't want to have any kind of variability. Variability is what drives fear and ultimately interest rates moving up and down. And when you access that market, we want to make sure we're ready for that. So part of this discussion is being ready for that time period, which from my perspective gives you certainty for budgetary reasons, and more importantly, taking advantage of what you can do, which is get strong interest rates because of great credit worthiness and have the access to the capital markets to do the capital projects that you want. Not in full, that we're going to talk about tonight, but in a partial piece. So again, that chart right there is part of why we're sitting here tonight. Turn to the next page, please. So let's just talk about the project itself. That is the main focus. You've received bids and you've accepted those bids, and the estimates for the project are approximately $47 million. I know there's some movement potentially in that based on some of the things that are associated with the project itself. We have a reimbursement resolution that was established for $50 million, and you've received, one thing we didn't have last time, was the RACP grant acceptance. The RACP grant is driven by the spend of projects, and then once the project is over, you then have to go through the final process to receive those funds of $5 million. You've also received an additional grant for $750,000, and then you've obviously been working through the process to receive donations over the course of time. In all of those cases, those are access funds that you can use for your purposes to cover the cost of the project, but you have to get the project completed first for you to be able to use them to pay down debt or principal or for operational costs. So the difference between those obviously puts us in a position of about $10 million, we'll call it, which means you essentially need about $35 or so million. You assume some interest earnings, things like that. So that's the kind of a big number. Our viewpoint is, let's look toward a $20 million financing. That's the number we're going to talk about as a hard number for a transaction amount. And then we'll have some thoughts on using internal funds or other things as time goes on to kick up the balance of the transaction of the building itself. Important considerations. We've talked about these before, but these are very important to you. You have a bond counsel whose job is to make sure that we do this debt as a tax exempt issuance. And we also want to make sure we follow state guidelines, which is you'll see all the documentation that's being discussed tonight is an ordinance, legal advertisements, and the concept of useful lives. Those are all very important things that are tied to federal and state guidelines. We believe we will fit within all of those guidelines. You have a need, you have a project timeline, and you have a reasonable estimate of what the project cost will be. So we'll handle that. All of the funds that you can borrow, you can earn interest on. We've had previous conversations about that ability to access your investment alternatives. Right now, that market is something like 4.3% on interest rates on the funds that you can invest in. Your funds that you have on hand also can be invested, which is obviously it's been driving some of your growth in your fund balances, which is great. But all of those things meet the federal and state considerations. Turning to the bottom part of this presentation, at least of this page, is what is a parameters ordinance? And I know we talked about this in the past, but anytime a township does anything legally, you have to pass an ordinance. Well, parameters is the word that is a little unique here. The concepts behind parameters is we are going to establish maximums for a variety of matters, okay? Maximum total borrowing amount, maximum coupon rate or interest rate, maximum final maturity, maximum annual debt service payment. All of those are extreme numbers. We have no intention at all to hit any of those numbers. But because we are not accessing the market today or tonight, we have to establish these things for state guidelines. You can't do this any other way for having the full flexibility based on this is very normal for Pennsylvania local government, schools, counties by having these established. Why we came up with the numbers we're going to talk about are tied to exactly what the full cost of the projects are. As heard earlier, you have a $50 million reimbursement resolution. We have feasibility studies associated with buildings. We wanted to use a number that fit within the guidelines of those total projects. You as a township will have all of the ability to decide how much and when you want to access the balance of those capital markets. But this establishes the only time you need to make a public approval for any debt issuance. This would be the last time this would happen. We've established, in this case, the legal authority through this application, ultimately, and the advertisement of $60,500,000. Why it's more than $50 million is because when you issue public debt, you need to have flexibility to move principal and interest payments around when the time comes when the market is what it is. So we always use about 20% buffer in all of the parameters ordinances. It is essentially impossible for us to have a maximum principal amount of that much money and a maximum interest rate that we're establishing at 6% to make this work from a legal standpoint, but those are the two extremes associated with this. Keep in mind, if we move forward with the first step of this, or maybe the only step of 20 million, it fits within that. So in the future, if the township says, we're done borrowing, we can go back and tell the state, we're not going to borrow any more than what we've already borrowed and we'll just remove it off your books. But this would be the one and only time from a public debt approval process, this would establish all of those things. Okay, I'll stop for a second. I got into the legal world, but we have a real lawyer here too. If you have any questions from that standpoint, but that's the high level of the concept.
I'm going to object to having a real lawyer. Just
A real bond lawyer.
Okay,
And
that's
you
fine.
might remember I told you my dad was a lawyer. And
I was fine with that comment.
so let's talk a little about some numbers now. And then we can get back into some of the questions or comments on the process here. So if you want to turn to the next page. This will look somewhat familiar, just maybe a different color than we might have shown in the past. You might recall in previous conversations, we've been talking about kind of long-term planning, annual payments, assumptions of final terms, things like that. This is a summary of what it could look like based on market conditions. Simply put, this would be similar to like a home mortgage in a sense of how the debt would be paid back. You and I, if we went out to buy a house, you could decide to amortize your house over 20 years or 15 years or 30 years. municipal bonds are done in a similar fashion. You follow certain federal guidelines, and you ultimately decide on the final maturity. So in this case, given what we've been talking about, this puts us in the kind of 24, 25 year range, based on kind of a payment schedule of $20 million, amortized over that period of time. The principal and interest as an estimate, based on market conditions, is about $1.4 million per year. You have a small amount in the first year, but we have flexibility to adjust some payments if you need. You can afford this debt service given your budget, and you can afford this debt service over the course of time. This is about as simple of a structure you can make because you don't have no other debt outstanding ultimately. So there's not a lot of magic you can do from a structuring standpoint. Important to point out, any bond issuance that you do has optionality to refinance when market rates come down. So as an example, if we sold these bonds, and let's make the assumption that the coupon rate, okay, the rate that is paid to the investors is 5%. If in 7 or 8 years, interest rates are at 3%, you will see me in front of your podium again, talking about the opportunity, should you choose, to refinance the debt. That is an option for you. That is what is tied to these transactions. You have the option to refinance at any time in the future after a certain period of time.
That period of time is like the first 7 years, right?
7 or 8 years, we haven't finalized that, but it's the max is 10. More than likely, would probably be between the 7 and 10, probably around.
This is like a callable bond then.
Exactly right.
Yes, but you can't do it like next year. You're
Well,
locked in for 7.
You can't do it tax exempt as a refinancing next year.
Okay.
That was a change that happened in 2017 with the tax reform. There's no such thing as a tax exempt advance refunding. What you can do is, a perfect example would be you guys. Let's say we borrow the $20 million. Let's say there's additional funds that you feel you want to pay down future principal for a variety of reasons. You can do that. You can put the money in an escrow and pay down principal. What would happen is you pick a number, $5 million. 2 years from now, you said, I've got extra money, let's pay down principal. It doesn't make sense to keep it on our accounts because interest rates are where they are. We'll make that decision. If you can put the money in an escrow, the investors know the money's there. It goes in there for the period of time until the call period, 8 years from now. But legally, the debt is off your books. And from a payback standpoint, it is off your books. And then on that call date, all the investors get paid back at that time. They'll be notified. That's the process. You have flexibility to pay down principal anytime you want.
I'm not sure how that works. So what are you putting that money into in an escrow? And so they get paid off faster at a lower interest rate, but it would be in 7 years. So it's not like it doesn't get into it doesn't. You could pay it back along the way, but you don't get credit for it until 7 years.
You get credit for it, and they get guaranteed get paid back because they know when they bought the bonds that the bonds were callable within a period of time. Let's call it 7 or 8 years. So you guys, again, using this example, 2 years from now, you put $5 million into pay down principal. It gets invested essentially in U.S. Treasuries, a special U.S. Treasury rate called slugs, and that is essentially the U.S. Treasury rate at the time. You lock it up for those period of time. You can earn money on that money, but at that time, the bondholders know that those bonds are being called off.
Okay, so you're earning. There's another mechanism where you're
Yes.
basically offsetting the interest,
Yep.
and so they're getting their interest. We're getting it off our books. Everybody kind of comes out.
Exactly. You get the benefit of the market at that time. So
Uh,
right now, short-term rates for U.S. Treasury type securities are in the 4% range. So that stays exact to it as it is. You're kind of getting that benefit as well. So
You may not be getting at the same interest rate as the coupon rate for the bond, though, right? Is it?
your coupon rate would be established. So you know what you're getting because you're locked in at let's say a 5% coupon, but you're earning at 50%. So again, I want to understand there's optionality for you in the future should you choose it. And it can be both tied to the interest rate environment for refinancings and also tied to your use of cash if you choose. This is getting that influx for you for the capital project itself. I know that's a lot there, and probably more bond math than you want to hear in this conversation. That's the concept. And if you choose, I will be in front of you talking about the concept of defeasing bonds in the future. So that's the structure. So although it's saying a $20 million principal amount, And we're talking about an ordinance that is $60,500,000. That would fit within that total that you'd be authorized or be approving tonight.
So why are you looking for 60 if we're only looking for 20? I don't quite.
Because
60 is the max number. So that's the max we can borrow, so we do it one time, so we don't have to do a bond ordinance every time.
Okay.
So we do the 60 now, so that if we want to borrow 20 today, and borrow 30 tomorrow, and borrow 10 the next
All
day,
right, but we're only doing 20 right
we
now.
don't have to keep coming back.
I got you.
yes, it's full flexibility here. And one more thing to point out. The township, when you do any borrowing, you have to file with the Department of Community and Economic Development. That's the legal approval process. You'll see in your packet, there's a borrowing-based certificate and a debt statement. The debt statement says zero, no debt. The borrowing-based certificate takes essentially 3-year historic averages from the total revenues of the township, and it figures out what your capacity is, kind of like your line of credit, we'll call it. You have over $95 million of accessibility to borrow funds, given your amount of funds you generate. So you're not hindering future borrowing ability in the future. You have plenty of capacity. And again, if you don't choose to borrow anything else, you have 20 off your $100-ish million, and that's your ability to borrow in the future.
So if we're comparing it to an amortization on a residential mortgage, if it's my residential mortgage and instead of 1.443250 in the first in 2027, if I pay 1.5 flat, are we able to prepay at any point that way and reduce principal on the back?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that concept of defeasing. You know, if you choose, you can.
We don't have to put the whole 20 in a pot. We can put $50 in a pot. And
You can't, there's a cost to that, of course. You're paying escrow agent and everything else. You want to make it right. I mean, you're not going to put $20 in a pot, but if
How do you know what I'm saying?
you may not.
Okay, so there is you're using the word defeasing, I'm using the word prepayment. There is a possibility that if we have a good year in 2033, where we have a surplus of $6 million in a year, we can put that towards bond repayment and knock out the back year of the payments.
But it goes to the same escrow.
It goes to the same
principle, it's
concept.
not escrow principle, so
It
it'll
goes to
sit
the,
in a bucket. I
it
mean,
goes to
it's
the
for one guy.
I got you.
And just, I'm gonna be I'm still trying to make sure I got it, but so this is actually not going back to the bond holders, it's just going to this escrow that's earning interest against the.
The bondholders get notified that they're being prepaid. So
Okay,
you're not
Yeah, it
doing
goes back.
another transaction per se.
They hold the
or-
escrow account.
so it goes back to them.
They hold
So
the
they're
escrow,
gonna pay.
but for tax reasons, they can't,
Okay, but they're gonna earn less interest as a result of that in the long term.
but they're paid off, the risk is.
They know they're being.
They're paid off, but they're paying
You
less.
can't take it back out again. That's the point.
Yeah, okay.
And they're able to relend.
All right, see, I didn't understand the first time, so I wanted to make sure.
Defeasing conversation is probably something not really worth having a conversation about.
I want to give you guys, know what your options are.
That's like a 3 year from now conversation.
Exactly.
Okay,
Well,
sorry to jump the gun.
it is and it isn't, we have options. If we wanna pay it, we can pay it. If we wanna pay more, we can pay more. If we wanna pay it off, we can pay it off.
Right, but we're not doing, it's part of the conversation about the technical aspects of defeasance. It doesn't make sense to really dive deep into that today, as opposed to the next time when we say, hey, Jamie, we have $20 million that we want to get rid of this bond, then we call you when we do it a one-shot deal.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're good.
So that's, at least this is an idea of what the market conditions look like. PNC Capital Markets, so you'll see on this, we went through a process to find the underwriting team, the bond investor team, who would do this. It would be a 2-team approach. PNC Capital Markets would be the lead underwriter, and then we have Stifel as the co-manager. So we're gonna have 2 underwriting shops to help market the bonds. We wanted to have that extra flexibility because we wanted more investors to find this, and having 2 financial institutions giving their name, given the market itself is very valuable. Yes, sir.
So this is gonna sound nasty, it doesn't mean to be. Is all the juice in these numbers?
All the juices.
The vig, the
Yeah.
juice, whatever we wanna say.
The cost of issuance are in the numbers.
It's, yeah, exactly. It's gonna cost, it's all in it, okay.
Yeah, I would never.
No,
not show
no
you.
hidden, no, okay.
No, there's no hidden anything.
Because obviously, when you start talking up about or talking about accountability and multiple people, that doesn't come for free. So that's
So-
part of the $14 million of costs that we have to get 20.
14,
Yeah.
no, oh, you mean the interest?
Yeah,
rates?
yeah,
You say vague, I know what you're saying, but no, there's a fixed cost of issuance that will be associated with the transaction, okay? And then there's the interest rates you're gonna pay on the bonds.
Okay, so that fixed cost is not in this?
No, it's all in there.
Okay, good.
So when the 34, 327,
We
250 debt
understood.
service number includes
The big,
the big, plus it includes the guy who needs,
we're good.
the guy who needs to be paid to
Do
administer.
all this work.
This is the principal and the interest, it's not driven up.
So 14.3 is all in, no hidden, gotcha. You know me, another 3 million or 2 million at the, okay.
I'll be fully transparent. The only cost that you'll have annually is you'll have to have what is called a paying agent on this. You'll see that in the
I saw it
ordinance.
in the ordinance, yeah.
Yes, so they'll charge you $750 a year to send you an invoice and pay the bondholders.
Outrageous.
We're done.
You're done.
Okay, that's it.
I just, I'm
I don't
transparent,
know,
I'm
would
appreciate
that be
it.
the paying?
You have to get special thanks to that question. So that's the annual cost. for
So
having
that
this.
bid is not in this?
Not in that,
Okay,
I'm
all
sorry.
Well, that's completely,
That is your budget.
that's completely transparent, thank you.
Okay, so, let's turn to the next page, because now we can.
Oh, no, I'd like to finish. Allow me to.
Yeah, this is essentially the same thing. I wanted to
Okay.
show you at least, this would be what the amortization schedule would look like. Again, these are assumed coupon rates, assumed yields based on, a market rate right now. And this is the principal payments as estimated for this. You can see that just the way how bond math works, you'll initially start paying more interest first, and then the less will come over time. Hence why you see the principal amount increasing over the course of time. That's just the way it works, and that's how you end up with, somewhat similar annual debt service payments between now and final maturity in 2049. Okay. And you can say anything else. Change the next page, please. Okay, so here's the timeline where we've proposed. So we've done a fair amount, you've done a fair amount to get us to this point. Again, we've, I think, hit every flexible alternative you can do as a township to access capital markets, to get yourself ready to prepay yourself back if you wanted to in the future, as well as getting all of the ducks in a row to get to the potential bond market. The balance of this is actually getting us to the bond market. So we have established a scheduled rating call with Moody's Investor Service that would occur on Monday. We have prepped the township. We have prepared a presentation for Moody's Investor Service, who rates almost everyone throughout the country. They're a very well-known company. They will take the financial information, the plan of finance, the strong financials and management of the township. You may see tonight there's some policies and procedures that you've been adopting. Those are all positive things that we plan for to be ready for this. The goal here would be for you to be AAA. Full stop. That's the best you can be. I think you're warranted for that, and we expect that. That call will be on Monday, is the plan. That would be something you pay for, to do a credit rating. So we didn't establish it until after this meeting. Assuming that happens on Monday, we would get the rating back about a week later. And from there, we have been working on the offering statement. It's called a preliminary official statement, which is a book about 30 pages long, plus an audit at the back. It tells all of the great things about the township, gives the investors the opportunity to understand what they've been investing in. And at that point in time, PNC and Steve will be prepared to market the bonds. When you heard me talk about that spike in the market, that happened back in April, our goal here is for us to get to market before July. We would like to do this by the end of the month and have your money in hand at the end of July or early August. That's the way the timeline has been established. I think it's the most prudent method of finance, given where we are today. And given that you have the flexibility in the future to do whatever you want, this would be 20 of the $60 million essentially being funded.
So what if we didn't want to do it that quickly? If we pass the ordinance tonight, do we have a grace period built in where we say, we pass the ordinance, we can do the bond issue? Is there a deadline for us to say we have to do this first piece, or can I say, you know what, we've got the lifestyle center covered. This is really for a fire station that we're planning in February of next year, or a police station in March of next year, and we're gonna wait till December to issue. We're clean with that?
It's the interest.
You can, yes.
I get that, just making sure that when we pass
Yes,
the
to
ordinance.
make the decision on the interest.
That I understand, but I'm trying to make sure that
Yes.
if we pass the ordinance tonight, we're not locked into this schedule.
You're not.
This is the preferred
This is
schedule.
our
this is our-
recommendation as you.
This is our investment advice, but if, as a group, our decision is we're okay with the borrow, but not today,
Let
not
me,
tomorrow.
let me recap my take on it, see if it's right. So, right now, if we pass everything tonight, we basically have up to 60 million to pull when we want to pull it. That's my perception
That's
of
right.
what he
And
just
and
said.
that's what I'm trying to clarify for sure. is that Passing it tonight is not, we're borrowing $20 million tonight.
No.
Passing it tonight is we are opening ourselves up to the ability to borrow
Yes.
up to 60 at a time and place where we choose to do so.
Yes, the caveat I would make is I would probably push off the rating call. And for that reason, ratings are good for 3 to 6 months. Ultimately, once you kind of get it established.
So if we pass this tonight, then I don't even know how we say go ahead with the call for tomorrow,
Or Monday.
whatever it is. Is there a way for us to know if we do the call tomorrow that we're already paying for, since we passed the bond for it? Is there a deadline that we can get? I'm not gonna hold you to a firm, it's August 12th at 2:30 in the afternoon, but is there a general idea of that? That's the first limit of if we wanna borrow now, this is that we paid for this window. The next window opens after that and you gotta pay for it again.
It's usually 3 to 6 months on how long the ratings are good.
You never said what the rating.
It's based on the size of the transaction, it's your first time rating, doing a first time rating, you get a discount for the lease. So, that's the way it works.
Suck you in.
Yep. So that's, $20,000+.
Okay, so if we say it's a go for Monday, it's gonna cost us about $20,000 to get us a 3 to 6 month window. And if we don't do it, we're no longer getting the first timer discount. It's probably gonna be more like 25 or 30.
No, it would be, well, it depends how much you borrow. It's a-
Same number, 20 million.
Let's call it, it'd be 35.
Okay,
So what if, okay, it wouldn't matter if we said, if we approved everything tonight and said, instead of 20, let's just do 15, that's gonna be just fine. As long as we do it within the 3
yeah,
days.
just trying to figure out that first window that we're paying for if we're going, if we pass and we're going Monday, what's that first window? Because we then have to have a conversation of timing for
When
everything
will
else.
that actually start?
The,
When they come back in a week
when
and
we
give
go to
us,
the call. Yeah, we don't want to have the call unless you're ready. That's,
Well, but if we say we're ready, I think Jim's question was, when does the 3 to 6 month window?
Yes.
And that's when they give us the
That's
report.
when
after
they-
rating's completed.
After about a
So
week.
it's a
Which is
week.
after.
got it. Then the clock starts.
That clock really starts. And again, you've heard me say this, but, there's a comfort level, there's a volatility level. That's what we're talking about here. You should access the capital markets to do projects that you're considering in the future. I think the known certainty of having the funds, I think, is of value to you.
Right.
And then you have the flexibility to make other decisions. But
And the number that we're borrowing, I read in the ordinance itself, is general purpose money. It's not tied directly to any specific project
it
yet.
is, it is for capital projects and buildings.
So while your presentation talked about the Lifestyle Community Center, it's actually, part of our consideration is some of the other capital projects that we're doing and making sure we have the flexibility to start investing in those,
Yeah.
because one of the highlights of the community center is we actually can afford it without taking the money out. So it's not necessarily tied to that, it just, we can use it for those, we can use it for mixed use projects,
Yes,
having cash on hand.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, we should also consider that by bringing more money back into the cash reserve, we also get the interest earnings on that money.
But there's an arbitrage cap, right? You can't borrow money to earn
You
it at
can't
a better
earn
rate
it
than you
above what
borrow.
your yield is.
Yeah.
So let's make the assumption you're 4.5, you're earning 4.30. Yeah, so you're,
There's another little caveat too, that we can use the bond money.
Right, but keep our other capital at a higher number. We just can't invest the bond money at a higher number.
if you, there's exceptions to all arbitrage rules. We talked about them previously with the concept of $15 million. There's also a spend exception. So you're knee deep in the project. If you spend within certain spend downs, you can go through the arbitrage exclusion for spend down. So that, again, you have to fit within that, but you gotta spend the money. You're borrowing money to spend money.
So the best advice that you're giving as an expert in this field, based on your understanding of where the rates go and gone have been, that this timeline that I'm looking at now with the Monday call and potentially a close by, I guess, send it out to DCD in July with a close with the two underwriting companies by the end of August is the best, most feasible, economically viable idea.
Yes.
Okay.
So the smart thing to do would be get to 20, pay yourself back. Then all of the rules are met in terms of what we spent on, what we did, so that if we want to pay the money down on the bond, it's our money.
Or to borrow the money, use the borrowed money to pay the new bills in the community center, keep
Or-
our cash, which
or that.
allows it to grow at a higher rate. because
Or
we're
that.
not
But
touting
either
that
way, we're,
That's
It's
those are reimbursement resolution.
it's our, it's because we
We can
did
make
it
an
with
investment
that,
financial decision with the cash in hand at that
we
point.
can do that. So,
I see the lawyer shaking her head or nodding, so that means that I believe her more than you.
She's a lawyer.
I know, we're all very smart.
oh my gosh.
So,
She appreciates it too, we're good.
so yes, you know, we were here a year ago, you know, we have, markets move up and down, right? We all know that. If I knew where rates were gonna go exactly tomorrow, I would be in Aruba right now. But I know what I know, and I know what I've seen, and I know what you need. And I believe you need to access the capital markets. I think you should do it before July, and then you have the flexibility to do with whatever we want to do going forward. You have great options. And if rates go down in the future, we will refinance the debt, we will pay off debt. We have that option.
I have a bunch of questions. Good.
Yes.
So it'd be like 7 or 8 questions. So give me some reading. So Bob, first question to you though is that where are we gonna, the bond payments, we're making that out of the general fund? What fund do we pay that out of?
That would be out of the general fund, it's a general obligation.
Okay, that's what I thought. Now, I mean, we know the markets are a bit crazy right now. Like I said, I think the tax, the tariff deadline is in July, but even like today, things were crazy with two very famous people going at it. I mean, do you consider right now the environment, when, you know, we're a first time bond, we're doing this for the first time, do you consider this like a risky or a complex bond based on the conditions?
Well, it's not a complex bond, first off.
Okay.
These are the most normal issuance for investors. Most people own municipal bonds because they are very simple to understand, and they understand that they have a tax advantage to owning them. They are very normal. From the market itself, if the plan we're showing here is what it is, if I'm wrong on the date and we're seeing a haywire event, I will be sure to tell you, we're not gonna be selling bonds that day, we're gonna push it off. That is a guarantee. We have 2 major bond underwriting firms part of the team, and we have a pricing group that does negotiations with bonds nationally. We are #1 in the country, we do more than anyone in this country. We will make sure we do it at a good time, at a place that makes sense. If the world goes the wrong direction, we will stop the process.
Okay, yeah, and you that was one of my questions actually, but now there's I mean, I understand there's like different types of bonds. Right now we're looking at a negotiated private sale, and the other one could be a competitive sale.
Correct.
And so what's the I mean, obviously I know the difference, but why are we going
Why
one route
versus the
versus the other? Yeah,
I'll tell you exactly right.
okay,
For one, when there's potential for volatility, when you're talking about large borrowing amounts, and when you have a firm like PFM that are doing the negotiations, along with great underwriting firms, we're gonna get the best execution possible by working with those firms, because they're gonna find all the investors. A competitive process, which we do all the time, puts us out, and the volatile market could be a day where you get one investor, one bidder, and you don't know what it is. Here, we're gonna be working through it. My viewpoint is strong credits in normal markets make a whole lot of sense to do competitive sales, do them all the time. Traditionally, when there's some potential volatility or other things, I think you should bring it in and have the experts doing all the things necessary to have our flexibility to do what we need to do at the time of pricing. And in that case, my viewpoint is we do this through a negotiated process. We did go through a competitive process to select the underwriters, by the way, I want to point that out. That's why we have two. We went out and selected through a process to get that and made our recommendation. So we did a hybrid.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the first question about risk. 'Cause I did some analysis here, and I figured the only reason you would do a kind of a private sale is because of certain environments a
We
bit
want
risky.
to make sure we have the team in hand and we can get it all done. And we will know exactly what the market is and we'll make sure it is the best it can be. When you have a strong credit backing, there should be plenty of investors coming to market, coming to look for your bonds.
So my next question was like, there's the difference between general obligation and revenue back. I mean, if we're going for the community center, obviously I think the intent here was it's gonna break even, so there's a revenue generation mode. Would it be,
General obligation is a better way to go.
okay, tell me why, I just want to
But
understand.
it's just more traditional. General obligation issues traditionally get a 10.15 to 22% better interest rate
You do, okay.
than
There's a little
than revenue issues.
There's a little bit less risk in the
Correct.
repay, because we're not relying on revenue to do it, we're relying on our general.
That's correct. However, many local governments have enterprise funds, right? So traditionally what happens is a township will go and borrow money for their sewer projects. It's being paid out of the enterprise fund, but it's a general obligation issue. So you get the benefit of the general obligation, but it's being paid back from the revenues of the utility of the enterprise. So you get the best of both worlds.
Okay, I got you. So when you modeled all this, and actually you answered a lot, I had this long list of questions and you answered almost all of them by just going through that, so thank you. So
No, thank you.
all right. So thank you anyway, but do we have right now 5%? Is that you think?
That's the coupon rate. I think I want to be clear here.
Yeah.
Where bonds are different than mortgages. I always like to equate to mortgages. You and I go out and get a 30-year mortgage, your lawyer or girl say, what's the 30-year rate? And I go, it's 6.5%. You go, okay, let me call the other bank and see what that is. Oh, it's 6.25. It all moves around
Yeah.
the US Treasury. The way bonds are priced traditionally are where there's a coupon rate, which is the actual rate that they earn, and then there's a yield. That's really the underlying rate that they receive. So can you go back 2 pages? Sorry. So when you look at, one page, I apologize. So if you look at column 4, each maturity is a yield. That's a rate of return on that maturity. So you can see, because of the way the yield curve is, your 2026 maturity would be 3.37%, although the 5% is the coupon rate, so that's the interest you'll pay, but you're going to receive something by paying at a higher rate. So when you look at the overall yields, the yield of the issue will be something like 4.6 or something like that when you blend everything together, and it takes into account the premium and the discount associated with bonds being sold this way.
So is that like a cumulative yield?
Yes.
So
It's like an APR, as you would.
yeah, it's considered like an AP. So as you go down the time scale, that's essentially your
Yes.
APR. It's just a little lower than the 5%
That's
coupon rate.
each maturity. So the blended,
Yeah.
it's like 2/3 in, so you're probably around 4.6-ish, percent of the overall rate that you'd be borrowing at ish. And that's the way it would work. So our decision point and plan here is, the 5% coupons, getting really bondy here, those are probably the best coupon structure for a $20 million issue within a 24 to 25-year period in this market. There are some times where you sell the bonds with 4% coupons and the yield is 5%. Those are called discount bonds. We want to make sure we're finding a delicate balance of what is the best structure for both us and the investors to get the best spreads. So we're going to make sure that happens. It may be 5% throughout, it may not.
So what I'm hearing is like, so we could, at the end, your yield is 4.92 and you're thinking maybe we can get 4.3 on our interest rate, but you won't have the same amount of money.
Your average rate on the whole thing will be about 4.5, 4.6. That's what the arbitrage yield will be, and that's what you're allowed to invest. So you're essentially practically breaking even with your investment right now as under current rates.
Breaking even with what we have in the bank and the yield we earn versus what we're paying. Is that what you're saying?
If you invested the money, you would break even.
Pretty close.
Obviously, we won't because we'll be using it, but so you'll be.
Except that we'll be able to potentially keep what's in our general fund now, have it generating interest, and the interest from our current funds might be able to pay principal and interest.
Right, yeah. And my last question is like, given the volatile times, and you said, hey, we're not gonna go in until we're comfortable, but do we have, as a board, the ability? I mean, I was reading the ordinance, and it wasn't clear because we gave you guys these conditions or windows to work in, but it's like, if we're in that window, you're locked in, or do we still have the ability to say, hey, we're not comfortable with this?
Yeah, so here's how it works. I'll give you the real life situation. So when we decide to pull the trigger, so follow this schedule, let's make the assumption it's the end of June, okay? A few days in advance, we're seeing things are looking pretty good, the market rates we're liking. We've negotiated some of the pre-marketing with the PNC and Steeple team. I'm communicating with your administration throughout, and we as your fiduciary say, we're good with this as of that time. We've now done all the things necessary to approve the ordinances, we've posted the official statement, we've gotten the rating done. Let's say the day of pricing, something really bad happens, okay? We can stop it, okay? It hasn't happened very much, by the way, but you guys ultimately sign what is called the addendum, the bond purchase agreement addendum. So it's a bond purchase agreement that's in your ordinance, that's part of your ordinance, and then there's an addendum that will be held in escrow to essentially satisfy the fact that we have authorized the approval. So you can go out to the market at 10 o'clock in the morning on that June 27th or whatever day it is, and things are going great, and we're comfortable with it. We're going to get on a phone call with the administration because we've already kind of been pretty blessed, and it works out. Then we will recommend and say move forward, and then they will authorize the signature essentially of the addendum. So yes, you have flexibility essentially up to the point, and I would be on the phone a lot with you.
Right, so that's, as we get closer to the issuance date, that's you and Bob talking on a,
Regular schedule.
whatever we do, hourly, minute by minute, quarter by quarter, to make sure that we are issuing at the right date, and then he says, go, and someone then calls me and I have to come sign an addendum.
Yes.
But I guess you were looking for, can we make the call and say, stop it?
Yeah, it was because, I mean, let's be honest, there's some very unsettling times, and that's what I'm a little nervous.
You gotta have a little bit of trust that he's not.
No, it's not that, it's not a lack of trust, right? But
Yeah,
you just don't know.
there's a trust thing here, but again, we don't recommend this, but if you go to market, and we've got all, Tim and the investors would not be very happy if you sold all the bonds and it gets to the end, the point say, hey, we're not going to accept it. There's a little bit of a,
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
You don't want to.
Yeah.
We want to stop and wait before that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The addendum piece that we'd have to sign is the final piece, and if we don't sign it, it doesn't get issued, but we lose probably a rating point and some credibility in the market.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they're out selling an athlete, we say we're gonna buy him, and then we don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a scary thing.
We're gonna do our best to have as much flexibility and communication as possible.
Yeah.
So tonight's presentation is based on the 20. Do we have numbers readily available for different value amounts today?
Not in this set of numbers, but, if you said that we only want to borrow 15, we'll only borrow 15, but
I'm just curious to see what the math is in a public setting, and if we need to do it in a private setting, we'll do it in a private
I think
setting.
I've got numbers from previous discussions about the size.
No, but I'm saying that if tonight we want to say, all right, what, this sounds nice, and I think we can probably squeeze 30. I want to sort of see what the number of 30 is, and I want to sort of see what the number of
For every $1 million, it's about 125,000-ish a year.
For every million,
Million,
it's 100,
ish thousand.
100K,
Yeah.
10.
And as far as that number is concerned, the actual borrow number, we get the ordinance for 60.5, so that's my max, and I'm not asking for that. We're not going to ask for that tonight. But,
We will not borrow that.
and I guess it's sort of a question to Bob as well, is what's the process for determining that final number to put you out? Are we doing that tonight? Are we authorizing that tonight by the ordinance?
No,
Or is the ordinance big?
You're only authorizing the max parameters tonight.
Right, but I'm asking the next question, which is, we have the max parameters. When is the decision made and how? We have to have a transparency of the decision-making
Well, here's
process.
the other thing, because it's volatile, do we pre-authorize with conditions? And then let let these guys do what they do?
So I
or-
guess, Andrew, I'm gonna look to you on that a little bit on the transparency of that next, and I
You shook your
get
head no, so I'm.
You can, we'd like to know the number we're going for, because we ultimately want to communicate the right range to reduce investor service, but if you're saying, instead of borrowing 20, you're borrowing 30.
right, but that decision is not one I think that we are really entitled or should be just sort of making in a back room. I'm trying to figure out procedurally,
I agree.
transparency wise, what we should do tonight versus what we should do as some other announcement to talk about the amount itself, short of the 60.5 that we're theoretically authorizing ourselves tonight to do.
I was thinking the way you were, but you're right, because we seriously have enough to pay ourselves back 30, 35, 40 and put us in a position of strength that would cost us very little, so that if we have to move quick,
Right, and
with some of the other things that are going on,
I'm just wondering how do we manage that process, Andrew?
I was sitting here thinking that same question, is whether or not that needs to be made public or not.
All the lawyers think of good thoughts.
Look
today,
to
just-
Laura for some input
we're
too, but
looking for some of that smartness. right?
you are authorizing up to a bond of up to $60+ million. So if you're authorizing that to progress and to go that route, if you decide on $30 million, that authorization has already occurred to that point. So my understanding and opinion would be that could be authorized, and I don't know if as you said before, if conversations occur with Bob and they have you come in and sign that would be part of this evening's adoption of the ordinance. I think it falls within the parameters and the language and authorizations that are occurring this evening.
For the deliberation of the actual amount that we're authorizing them to go forward with, separate and apart from the ordinance which authorizes the big picture number, Sonny, Jim, and I shouldn't go in a back room and talk about what number we actually want to borrow. We should be doing that and having that. I'm trying to understand the procedural component of that decision itself, because I want to make sure that people are here.
If you want to do it that way and have that vote occur, you could certainly do it by a special meeting, an emergency meeting, and proceed that way as well.
Otherwise, we could authorize, in addition to the ordinance tonight, could we authorize a condition tonight without having to amend the agenda?
That's my opinion on that. Yes, you can do that, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it done through other municipalities, if that's the general manner in which these proceed.
I do, however, like it.
I have one quick question. Where did the 60.5 come from? I mean, we don't need anywhere near that.
So we worked through the $50 million reimbursement resolution. And for how we use the sensitivity analysis of using discount bonds or premium bonds, there's a 20% window essentially that makes up the difference to allow us to do either one of those things when the time comes up. 2 or 3 years from now, the market is different. We'll have that ability to move the principal payment term because we have a different market at that time. So that's what the 60.5 came.
But from our capacity, we're more like 95
You
million.
have plenty of room to do more. This is the amount that fits within a $50 million total capital improvement plan.
And the 50 came from what?
50 is based on the community center price. It's not based on the other Alloy 5 numbers that we
But we don't
did.
need all 50 of that, though, right?
We're not, I don't think we're gonna borrow
No,
50
right.
Sonny.
But based.
But I'm trying to figure out the procedural process, and maybe Laura can help us do that, is I wanna be sure that on the one hand, we're authorizing a big number, but that's not, to Sonny's point, we're not borrowing that. I wanna figure out, and maybe you can help with Andrew and everybody understand what the procedural piece is for us to decide that, and if we have to have a separate meeting to actually name the number, or can we add that to the agenda tonight?
And also to follow up with that, what's the time sensitivity as far as once you land on a number? Is that hours, days? How quickly does the township have to act? From the word go, so to speak.
Jimmy, I'm sorry, for the rating.
Once they decide on a number, is there a time sensitivity that?
The time sensitivity is tied to the day of pricing. So
Okay.
we work backwards off of what the rating discussion is. Again, we've certainly gone to a rating without having the perfect exact number because the market moves and the principal amounts may move a little bit. But if we're within a range of where we are, I feel very confident that the rating agency will look at your underlying credit, whether you're borrowing 20 or 30, you're gonna fall within a cash flow that makes sense. So there's a rating part of this, and then there's the actual transparency slash, real life perspective of what it is. So, we're talking about potentially a financing done at the beginning of July. We need to post the official statement or preliminary official statement, which happens a week in advance of pricing, and then we have the rating part. So, I'm sorry.
I have one question it's gonna be along these lines, and I'm sorry for my terminology, but, so how much of the, I'll call it VIG, is gonna need to be paid in that amount, no matter what we do? So we're gonna have an overhead of X amount of dollars, what is that? So if we go for 30 instead of 20, is there?
The only numbers that generally change because of the size of the transaction are tied to the underwriter's discount. And the rating changes based on size a little bit. And the DCD file, well, the DCD file is tied to $60 million. Everything else is kind of.
So the cost to do it from 20 to 30 is gonna be relatively close.
Yes.
There was a couple of numbers that were variable on the dollar amount that we were doing, but,
Those are also on a second issue ones, because we get the first timers discount.
Right.
You get the rating free entry.
but there is some cost savings to making sure that we do this once, not 3 times.
Okay. Sorry. Laura.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Laura Kurtz. I'm the co-chair of our public finance practice group at Ecker Siemens. Just to follow up on the question on procedure, we're talking about 2 separate statutes. What you're doing here is authorizing under the Local Government Needed Debt Act. From that legal perspective, you're authorizing this max amount right now. No other legal approvals, official action needs to be taken if you authorize $60 million. To the extent you would like to make a decision about doing a bond transaction for less than that 15, 20, 30 million, that is a Sunshine Act consideration. So of course you don't want to be having deliberations, making decisions, not at a public meeting, as you know. So I would defer to your solicitor, but in these situations, a lot of times there's a discussion that's had and either considered at an interim public meeting, a special meeting, or a decision is made and then ratified at a following meeting. So I think those may be your options in the Sunshine Act.
And that's why I was asking, there's time limitations for advertisement, whether it's an emergency meeting or a special meeting. That's why I was asking that the time sensitivity, if there, need to be an advertisement for a special meeting, it'll take a couple of days to get that advertised. You should notice out there, is that the time frame in which the township can work.
We have no Laguda consideration because the Laguda side is tied to this. The other timing of you getting an advertisement for a special meeting is just the timing of how long it takes you to get something at a special meeting.
I just wanted to be certain that it wasn't, you call Bob and say, hey, the time's, right, what's the decision? And we need this signed this afternoon, or whatever that process is, that we're not up against that type of time frame.
We've got it. For a special meeting, we have 21 days of advertising that we have to do?
One day, 24 hours.
For special.
That's exciting.
So looking at advertising deadlines, Monday could potentially be a meeting.
Yeah.
And I would just say, going back to that ratification, I mean, your manager and other employees are taking action all the time on your behalf, right?
Not
And
this big though.
correct, at public meetings following that, sometimes those actions are ratified. So I have seen that happen. It just depends on what your solicitor's responsible for.
So tonight, I think we're most comfortable with just the notion that what's before us is the max number, but then I think what it feels like is the best process for transparent purposes,
It's like we decide.
or we do it before that with a special meeting with 1 day's notice or 5 days notice if we need to, and we sit down and we talk about the actual number, then we can authorize Bob to go up to that number so he can communicate directly with them at moment's notice. So it sounds like it might be an hourly or daily consideration about when to actually issue.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I'm more comfortable with the authorization up front with a number than a back-end ratification.
Oh, I don't wanna do it back in.
So I think we need
I
to
don't
be,
think it's
I
fair.
I think if we approve this tonight at 60.5, I think the three of us need to be comfortable with the idea of doing a special meeting now in the next 2 weeks to come up with the actual number that we're comfortable with.
It's one thing ratifying the bills, it's another.
Yeah.
This is
This is bigger than the bill.
it's not ours.
Okay.
basically.
So we're separating the concepts then. All that's up in front of us tonight is the big picture. And then I think I'm gonna feel more comfortable calling a special meeting at some point to have the smaller picture so that we actually have a vote and something that we are held accountable to openly as opposed to,
Is,
by the way, we borrowed $40 million, we didn't tell you.
is waiting till the July meeting too late to give you that?
That's July 3rd.
Still at the,
If you're trying to get it done before the July 10th date, yes.
Honestly, we don't even know,
Is
what,
there-
I mean, this is like,
We're talking about volatility.
yeah.
Can we bite the bullet?
I don't know, since it's a spending conversation, if we can amend the agenda to add that number in now.
I would not amend the
Oh,
agenda
I
because it
got
is
you.
a spending.
I
I
got
think that's why I think a special
No,
meeting,
no, no.
just to make sure we're clear on that.
I think that's pretty much the exact issue that.
Yeah, that's why I asked. So I think what I feel more comfortable with is we're approving what's in front of us, which is the ordinance for the max piece. But then in the next 2 weeks, we're gonna have a special meeting because I wanna give the team the most flexibility. I wanna give us a chance to process what we're seeing. Maybe have some more information provided to us about what you said it's a rough 100,000 per million, but give us we can ask for it and give us some parameters. We can come back in this room and have a one-issue meeting that shouldn't take 3 or 4 hours and figure out a number, authorize you, and then we can go. If we pass the ordinance tonight, so there's some stuff.
Yeah, perfectly fine, yeah.
Okay.
We on the special meeting can get them on Teams. They don't have to show up.
No, if we have to be here, they're gonna be here.
I'm only an hour away, it's not that big a deal.
Okay, all right.
We'll figure that one out.
There's also a follow-up call on Tuesday to kind of regroup and then figure out where we go from here. When do items such as the opinion letter and all of that have to be in advance of that?
Yeah, that's post pricing,
Okay.
so a couple nuances here would be, we have to get to a point where we're finalizing the offering statement, right? So because you're telling the public or the investors what you're borrowing, so clearly we need to know how much we're borrowing before we put that on a number, so we wouldn't do that. I think given the ranges we're talking about here, and I'll talk to the rest of the finance team, but I think it's, as long as you're comfortable, I think we can still move forward with the ratings, that's the thing that's gonna take the longest. I think you can get there within, saying we're 20-ish, if it's more, they'll get it. And we can get it done, so you know what your rating is, and then from there, if there's a special meeting on or around that time, if there's we'd be fine. So that's my humble opinion.
So if you went out to the rating service on Monday, if authorized by the ordinance, and said, we've got a township looking between 20 and 30, but we don't have a definitive number, you don't think the rating's gonna change?
No, because they know that we're gonna be upfront, and we have capital needs, and that's part of our, what we're communicating in the official statement. It says that there's potential for future borrowings up to a certain amount, so all of it will be transparent for what the rating is.
But if you said to the rating agency, we've gotta borrow 20 to 30, and then we surprise you and come back and say we want 50,
Then
that we're still good?
we should be when we communicate back to them.
There's no way we're gonna do that.
That is for all the worst
There's
cases.
no- well,
I appreciate you thinking that way, but I kind of see and hear which way you're going-ish thought process, so I think
Yeah.
we should be fine with that.
Okay. All right. Sorry, we interrupted your questioning. Are you good?
No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Jamie, I think we probably interrupted your flow pretty significantly.
We were almost done anyway. My flow works on your flow. So, obviously we kind of hit the numbers based on 20 item. We talked generically about the timeline. We talked about some of the market conditions itself. We talked about the legal actions necessary. Everything else is really just, how the process would work. And you've heard my viewpoint on the direction we should go, but we can adjust slightly in the time.
And roughly 100 to 130 million that borrowed is what the debt service would be.
Sorry, 100 to 100 and something
Yeah.
per year, yes, per year difference.
Any more questions, Sonny?
I've been wrong before.
I don't think
No,
so.
that-
I'll check the notes here.
certainly, you're not gonna be exponentially run. Which is what it would take for.
You have two underwriters you're talking to, right?
We have two underwriters that would be part of the process. The lead would be PNC Capital Markets.
So you've already kind of selected, they're already selected, in other words.
In a competitive process. He's already bid that, you've bid that work out, you've picked the best,
Yes.
best of the best that you got applications for.
Okay.
I think Bob has a question.
He earned his vig.
Sorry?
He earned his vig, I said.
I'm gonna say it for the third time. I think Bob has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jamie, if we want to maintain that, your original timeline, that you had proposed for the July 10th date, how long do you give the board to give you an answer? We said like 2 weeks, but do you really need something next week?
I would like to know. I think we would want to have the number at least probably 10 days in advance of the pricing. So that puts us, we're talking about an end of early July, end of June, looking at the calendar. Let's see here, so that puts us at, we're not going to price, on July 4th, of course. That week's usually tough.
So hold on, can we amend the agenda to add a date for a special meeting for this? How do we get, we can, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then I'll make a motion.
Motion to add a
amend the
motion.
agenda for a special.
For what?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah,
I would say that we want to know by probably the 19th.
I say we do it for the next 2 weeks. Don't-
That's the last day, by the way, I would say.
No, we need to, whatever the minimum time to put the public on notice, not for any skullduggery, but for, this is tight. So we advertise as soon as you can tomorrow, the next day after so anyway, I make a motion to amend the agenda
Do we need a motion to set a special meeting?
to set the special.
I think we just do it.
I think
we
my
just
opinion,
do
you can certainly just set the
Okay,
scheduled meeting.
I think we should do that.
Okay. All right, so you would like something next week.
Or the week after.
The week after turns him into the 19th, which is his last day. He'd prefer something next week.
Is it that?
Next week starts.
Yeah, today's,
Okay, next week. What's your next week look like, Jamie? Wait, what's the minimum number of days for advertising?
One.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's paper.
Yeah.
To get.
I got you.
Yes, we're good. We can put it in tomorrow.
just let the time, whatever, but I'm free next week.
Do you think Wednesday, the 11th is a safe time?
Wednesday, the paper comes out, right?
Totally getting divorced.
We'll put in morning call.
Okay.
Divorced her?
I do not.
My wife is not gonna like me.
And you wouldn't want any other answer from me? because I think
We
everyone-
won't be here. We'll be in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, she knows.
You'll be away.
In Pittsburgh.
No, that's enough of my meetings for me. So we're looking potentially Wednesday the 11th.
Can I join by Teams?
That's tougher, but, or I could do Tuesday the 10th, but now we're starting to get a little tight on the notice piece.
No, it's a week.
We're good?
Yeah, we're
I
good.
don't know, a week, but it's 4 days.
What about you?
I'll get my.
I'll make it work, whatever, I mean, we haven't.
Tuesday,
yet,
that's
but,
good.
you know.
Well, no, I'm just trying to consider this ahead of the.
Yeah,
the
I'll
notice piece.
make it work,
Let's do
wherever,
this. Let's-
wherever we end up.
We're gonna figure that out in a minute. How's that? But that's the idea. You would need us to come up with a number within the next week, and then we'll focus from there, and I will, you have a question, Bob?
No,
James, any questions of Jamie or Laura,
I
or
don't think so.
anyone else? Does anyone in the audience have any questions on the presentation? Awesome sauce. Jamie, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Laura, thank you. Mysterious underwriter man, thank you. Okay. That ends the discussions and updates in the presentation section, so we can move to the ordinance. Weird how this flows. Ordinance A is ordinance 2025-02, accepting the bond purchasing agreement. Bob,
I think it's been covered for you consideration.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-02, accepting a bond purchase agreement.
I'll second that. Questions or concerns from the board? Sonny?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I'll be also, let me say this, right, when I was, before this meeting, I was very concerned, I mean, just because of the number, 15.5 and current conditions, and honestly, kind of, still, I have some concerns about the cash flow from the community center, whether or not we can, operationally, we can make that work, but basically, this is my takeaway is, best case scenario, the community center breaks even. It doesn't really pay for the capital though, we're still gonna have to take that, that's gonna have to come from the general fund. And.
Let me just.
Okay, go
That's
ahead.
what the plan was, to pay for the community center out of the capital fund. There was no expectation of loan money for it.
Right,
This is to prepare us for future.
well, what primarily, what we talked about was the community fund.
And I think this bond function is actually for the next piece and the piece after that. It's making sure that we have the capital for if and when we pull the trigger on the police station or fire station or the township building. It's giving us the
Which is
flexibility.
why we don't know exactly what the amount is.
Yeah, but I mean, what's
So,
right,
that's not-
obviously, it's money's money, it's just you're pulling money for the community center, so now you need it for other things, so.
Yeah,
It's a,
to do all the capital expenses that we need over the next 10 years in this township, we were gonna have to borrow money one way
at
or
some
the
point
other.
or other, and I guess my take on it is, given the current environment, I feel like we're rushing into something, and I don't even know if we need to really rush into it. We have enough money right now to pay for the community fund, and, with the environment, like, we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, another shoe could drop. So I'm more comfortable than I was. Jamie did a good job of making me a little bit more comfortable, but I'm not quite there yet. So that's, for me, it's still, I'm a no for that reason, because I just think the environment's still unstable, and, but I listen, I'm only one vote. I know you guys are probably headed towards the yes, that's fine, but that's where I'm.
Well,
I just don't see the need to move into in an area where, the winds are pretty rough. Waters are pretty rough right now,
If circumstances change where, being able to service the fire needs of the community, or the county authority comes and says, hey, we got to do Klein's Island, it's 200 million and you owe me 60, or something like that. I mean, this is not just having the material when the flush leave or fighting a fire in the community. Those are real possibilities. And it would not be foolish to make sure that we still had.
I get that, Jim, and I honestly,
Well,
I'm like.
We're gonna have to, he's right, we're gonna have to, whether it's 5 million or 15 million, it's undetermined right now. And we really have to do what's best for the community. So if opportunities open up that would allow us to move the township in a much better position, but it's gonna cost us $2 or $3 million, but in the long run, it's gonna save us in, let's say, service time to run calls for an ambulance or police, and we're all together, or,
No, I get that, but we're not anywhere near that.
I don't want you to think like you're hung up on the community center, because that money, a lot of that money was put aside long time ago.
Well, and my only point is that the community center is what's driving the immediate need. Otherwise, the other things we've talked about,
But I
we're
think that's,
further out.
but I think that's where, I may be in a little disagreement with you, and I don't want to speak for him, but
No, I
but
respect
it's
that.
not-
That's just where I stand, but
we really could run without doing this, but with the way things are progressing and where we're headed, it makes sense to have.
I respect your opinion.
Agreed.
Michelle, can I put you on the spot for a minute? Okay. With considering where we are currently in our financial state, considering the expenditures that we've already authorized for the community center, if we pay for it as we are planning to do, flat out of where we are, what's the anticipated idea of what our general reserve would be after we pay for the community center? Can you give me that? The big question with not a lot of notice, I apologize.
What's our general reserve balance would be?
Roughly.
Pretty much leaving anything we
Our general reserve would be at zero, roughly? Or we'd still be within the parameters that we'd have enough, we'd have the rainy day cover that we need
I
by.
have a rainy day, but then we have to stay on the capital needs.
But the capital needs I'm trying to anticipate with this idea is that in order to do some of the other things that we need to do that we've talked about over the last 6 months with consolidation of fire services and a police station that's too small, we would need to borrow. And over the last, I don't know, however long we've been here, a couple of years, but our surpluses are generally what over the last few years?
Up in budget,
Yeah,
about 5 to 6.
every year. So it's fair to anticipate. It's fair to anticipate based on our investments, based on the income stream from the tax base, both residential and income, that our general budget surpluses on a year to year can clearly cover whatever the borrow is, if it's 1.4 or 1.6. You feel confident, based on your evaluation of where we are, that we could cover this loan? And what, if you know, what's the current sort of rate of return that we're getting on the current investment of the general fund?
We're up at 4.3.
Okay, and as of today, the general fund's about 29? Okay, thank you. Should have probably told you before that I was gonna answer some questions, I apologize.
They did a good job though.
So, but, you know, I see where you're coming from, Tony, I see where you're coming from, Jim, and I think I wanna make sure that if we're borrowing money, which is a big commitment, and that's why I wanna make sure we have a special meeting about the number and not just sort of willy-nilly, that I like the idea of saving the general fund at 4.3 or whatever the number is, to make sure that we're still having the surpluses we have to grow and pay for the new money that will eventually get used in the life of the bond issuance. We're definitely going to be building these things, and I think if we can, part of the consideration of the amount that we actually borrow should be what are we actually anticipating building over the next 5 to 10 years. So if it's 20, we're anticipating about $20 million a bill. We're not borrowing extra just to borrow extra, but the other thing that I like that we talked about was that the 60.5, whatever we're issuing today, if we decide whether it's Wednesday or Thursday or whatever day next week that we've changed our minds and we want to be at zero, we're no harm, no foul. We haven't borrowed any money yet. And I think there is a robust conversation to be had if this passes about what our priorities are and what we're borrowing the money for and how it's going to be spent. And I think that's a conversation that really is going to get in depth. But and Cal pointed out last week, where we grew, since the last census, we grew 8.5% in population. We are 29,000, as you pointed out, Sonny, we're almost the size of Easton. I think we need resources and capital expenditures that are going to match what our population needs and wants. I don't want to spend like a drunken sailor on leave, but at the same time, I want to make sure that if we have the ability to borrow and spend at a number that makes sense, we're evaluating the needs of the community and putting those first. And I think based on the conversations we've had, that I've had with Pete, and that we've had with Mike, and we've had with Bob, that we've got some pretty serious needs coming up that we need to be ready and flexible to spend. And this is the best way to produce and preserve that flexibility, is to have the money in the bank that we can use. So that's sort of where I am now. But if we're done commenting up here, I do want to make sure the public gets an opportunity to comment on this issue. So, Mr. Foos.
Hello, Patrick Foos, 6123 Palomino Drive, Allentown, PA 106. I have experience in the past with dealing with parameters, resolution, and bonds. As a former Parkland School Board Director, so yes, I do understand exactly what we're talking about in the past as it related to the transparency aspect of the sunshine. I would just say that my concern as it relates to this ordinance is like a rules package, like how Congress passes the rules package before they pass the legislation. The reality is though, it's the back end. The part where you're budgeting for future years and you're not sure whether or not, trying times, your wallet tightens and whatnot. I would just caution, make sure that you have a valid purpose for it, whether it's for this amazing community center that's being built or for the fire station or police station or even this township building. Just make sure you have a plan for it, because again, you don't wanna keep coming up every single year to do this like Parkland did, because that's where it gets interesting budget wise, and where Parkland right now is suffering with the rainy day fund. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Anyone else have a comment, concern, question? Verbal hug would be nice. Anyone? All right, I guess we can call question and move to a vote then, unless you all had something else you want to add.
No, I mean, I said it all.
Good? Yeah. All right, so with that, we can move to a vote. So I guess all those in favor of the motion to adopt ordinance 2025-02, accepting a bond purchasing agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
By 2-1, that passes. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mysterious.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, before you move on, Laura, you have the signature packet, so we just want to be certain that we're signing the correct ordinance, so if you can give that to Jasmine then to
And
sign.
also before they move on, we should solidify the date, time, when we're gonna do the special,
Okay.
if we're gonna do that.
So what I'm gonna suggest then is, that was lengthy. Let's take a 5-minute recess, go off the record for 5 minutes, allow us to sort of consolidate our calendars, figure out what works for us. Allow Laura to come up and make sure we have the right ordinance package, and then we'll come back in rear to go on the next, on the resolution. So, everybody good with that? So we'll take a 5-minute break. What day are you guys?
Tuesday, right? Yeah.
You're good.
So we'll come back to order if that's pretty great. Thank you very much. We'll start just with not an agenda item. We confer, we are going to have a special meeting that will be advertised in the ordinary course of the Municipal Planning Code for a meeting on Tuesday, June 10th. That's 4 days from today, 5 days from today, at 7 o'clock here in the meeting room to, with the lone agenda item to discuss the bond amount for the issuance based on the ordinance that we just passed. So that will be advertised for those who aren't here. If those people who are here, please spread the word to the extent that you want to. Only the nice people who are nice in the meeting. But June 10th, 7 o'clock, special meeting here to discuss the bond issuance. With that, we're going to jump back in. We are on to resolutions. Resolution A, 2025-23, establishing investment policies. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, resolution 25, 23, 24, kind of related. Irregardless, Jamie mentioned that it's good to have these policies in place just for your financial rating. But they're good to have in place just as good government practice. It's a couple items on my list. That was a to-do list when I first got the manager's job. Another one is a little further in the agenda for internal controls policy. We've been pretty much operating under these guidelines, but it was never, I'll call it codified. We never put it in writing. So my recommendation to the board is to do exactly that. It sets policies in place, it makes it, excuse me, as a resolution, and it just gives staff parameters to work with, and it gives future staff knowing where to begin. So both those resolutions are in consideration.
Okay, but we're going to take them one minute just because it's easier to do that. So I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2025-23, establishing investment policies.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sonny. Questions or concerns, Sonny?
None.
Bob? Or not Bob, Jim? I'm good for one day. I also am good. Anybody in the audience have a question about investment policies for based on what Bob's presented? Seeing none, we can call question and move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to adopt 2025-23, establishing investment policies, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. I don't think we need to necessarily do another introduction.
Can I tell you the same thing?
Okay, don't do that. So I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2025-24, establishing a fund balance policy. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sonny. Any questions, concerns, comments?
No.
I'm good.
I also, anybody in the audience have questions about, about the fund balance policy? Seeing none, we can call question and move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion about 2025-24, establishing a fund balance policy, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
We're on to the motion section, which, motion authorizing extension of time to record docket 2338 Twin Ponds, mixed-use development, 8739 Hamilton Boulevard, docket 2357 XPO Logistics Truck Terminal Expansion, 7649 Penn Drive, and docket 2334 Blue Triton Semi-Trailer Entrance, 405 Nestle Way. Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you know, the conditions of approval for land development projects have the requirement to provide all plans and documents needed for the recording of the plan to the township engineer within 120 days. These are all at different stages. They were approved at different times. So I can just give you a brief overview of where they are. For XPO, they are working with Andrew on agreements, and Keystone is taking that through the recording. So they're still working on it. Twin Ponds, they have a representative here in case you want to speak to them. They are asking for 60 days rather than 120 because they have a buyer for the plans and they're close to getting those recorded. For Blue Triton, this will be their first extension. They're asking for 120 days. They need to go back to the Planning Commission for 2 waiver requests, so I believe they'll probably need the full time.
Thank you. Is it possible, I guess, Andrew, to break these out into 3 separate motions? There's really a distinction.
If you choose to do so, you can break it down into 3 separate motions, but just from my perspective, my point of view, XPO and Twin Ponds changed property owners, so there was some delay caused by that, and they're progressing to the point where agreements are going to be finalized and sent out to them shortly. Blue Triton, I guess, have to go back through the planning stages, but yes, you can break those down into individual motions.
Who's comment change that?
I don't know, but in order to have a conversation about it, we have to do a motion. So what I think I'm gonna do is do a general one motion, and then if we want to break it down to three, we can break it down to three after that. We can amend the motion, just so I want to open up the conversation. So I'll make a motion to authorize an extension of time limitation for the recording of docket 2334, Blue Triton semi-trailer entrance for an additional 120 days ending October 4th, 2025. Docket 2338, Twin Ponds mixed use for an additional 60 days ending August 27th, 2025. And docket 2357, XPO Logistics for an additional 120 days ending August 31st, 2025. Is there a second for that?
Awesome. Go ahead, Sam.
No, you got it. Go ahead.
Everybody wants a second, so
I'll
second and third. All right. So, I have a couple of quick questions, and then I think we do have representatives, and I think there are going to be some conversations. So that I heard it right, XPO is the first time? This is the first extension or the second
This is
extension?
the second extension for XPO.
And XPO, Andrew, you are actively working with them now?
I am, yes.
Okay, and how close do you think we are to getting we're working on the land development?
They have everything in hand. They have all the agreements have been sent out to them, deed of dedication. And I believe that's the one I just received an email today, wondering if they could do a quick claim deed for a small, into the deed of dedication. So I did get back to them for that, but I'm probably not going to accept that. But everything's in their hand, so as far as my work is done. So that, I think 120 days is in excess of what they need, but
Okay. So even if we were to say 10 days, you think we're probably at 10 days? I'm not going to say 10 days, but you think we're that close?
I think we're that close.
Okay. So with Blue Triton, this would be their first extension, but they have to go back to planning. So they actually will need the extension because they got some waiver deferral requests they got to deal with. Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So that brings us to Twin Ponds. I know Nate's here. So Nate, why don't you come on up? I think there's going to be some questions of you because this is the third extension for Twin Ponds, and I think there's some last. So why don't you introduce yourself, give us a brief rundown of what's going on, the extension timeline you're looking for, and I guess why we should give it to you.
Sure. Nate Fox from Overwire on behalf of D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton got this project approved. However, D.R. Horton's division that was going to build these units was closed. Corporate decision beyond our local ability to control. So we took the project out to market based on the approved plan. We have a buyer. Buyer is Vanguard Development Group out of Lancaster. They're also developing another project locally. That is the Timber Ridge apartment complex in North Whitehall Township at Route 329 in Quarry. Our agreement is to convey them a recordable shovel-ready project. With all agreements done, Mr. Shantz, I believe representatives from Vanguard have at least been in contact with you. They're representing us that they are working through the
I have
process.
a call with them tomorrow morning.
So part of this, we're closing on the property on or before July 18th. So in lieu of going through the exercise of having D.R. Horton record the plan, which would necessitate financial security, entering into development agreements, having the township do that, and then going back to doing an assignment and replacement financial security, which requires more staff time at either the owner or developer's expense. We were hopeful that the township would be agreeable to a 60-day extension, which would allow us to close on the property hopefully by end of July or thereabouts, to at least have forms of agreements in place, maybe not ready to sign on the 18th, but that the plan would be recordable because we have documents, financial security, and on or before July 18th, Vanguard Development Group would be the owner of the property, not requiring 2 steps of security agreements and then assignment replacement security.
Has Vanguard, has the buyer been able to review the existing documents and agreements, and we're ready, I mean, they close with you, they're ready to come in the next day and sign with us?
Ready to come in, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, their quote was, wow, this truly is a shovel-ready project. Let's get it together, and that's fair.
Mr. Chairman, that would be correct. Jeff Strauss with D.R. Horton.
Right, again, it just, video's easier to see.
No
than
problem.
someone-
Jeff Strauss with D.R. Horton, thank you. Mr. Chairman, basically, Vanguard wants to have everything ready to basically record the following day after they close on the property. Obviously, logistics that typically doesn't work out, but they are trying to accommodate that as best as we can. With the July 18th deadline, that gives us 45 days, so it gives us adequate time adequate time to conform everything with the engineer. Actually, it's gonna be Keystone is handling this particular case at this point with Andrew's office. Cal, get all their ducks in a row and post their financial security.
Okay, and, you know, we're giving, the suggestion is for 60 days to August 27th, that's another 5 weeks post-close. If it anticipate, we all know it may not close on the 18th, just stuff happens, but this is, I guess, as a third window, we would need to, if it's gonna get passed, it would be, we're gonna give you 60 days and no more, never again.
Why are we asking for that?
And
And for any reason this doesn't, the transaction with Vanguard would not occur, Ford would have to step up to the plate and provide financial security and record the plan and then sell an approved plan to another party at that point.
Okay.
We certainly acknowledge that.
That's the point of hoping to avoid having to do that. If we can do it all at one step, that's the hope.
So, and I'm gonna ask a fairly obnoxious question. For the last 240 days, that's been the hope to avoid.
Correct.
Yes.
And a lot of that time was spent negotiating with various parties until we finally came to terms with the Vanguard group. And yet multiple ongoing negotiations with different folks.
And also, I would say the other thing is for I would say first 100 to 120 days during the first approval period, that's when we did the hard work to actually clean up all the KC comments and everything to get it ready to bring to market. We didn't want to bring it to market with a 32-page comment letter.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we whittled it down now. Dave's not here tonight, but their last clean letter, basically I one outstanding item for them. That's just a BMP inventory sheet that has to be completed. They've been provided with all the names of the new buyers and everything to change all the record blocks to reflect everything. So it's pretty much locked and loaded at this point.
When's the actual expiration date now?
June 28th, I believe.
All right, so
It's probably in our pocket.
if it's June 28th, if we said instead of 60 days, 30 days, is that too tight of a window?
I would say so. Obviously, you know, as you know, closing dates are a little bit flexible there.
So I'm gonna put it in a zoning context, that's what I understand. That's what's the minimum relief that you're asking for? 60 days, the absolute minimum that you're comfortable asking for?
Yes.
Okay. And when was Vanguard, when did Vanguard sort of sign on and lock into this?
Sometime in April.
Okay.
They've exited due diligence within the next day or so. Everything's adequate. It's just now they have their period to line up their financing, do all the items that have to be done. Horton has already vetted them fully that they are capable of handling the transaction. That's why we mentioned the Timber Ridge project in North Whitehall Township. That's very similar. Actually, it's a little bit larger than this particular project, and they've been doing a bang-up job on that particular thing. Vanguard also we have had meetings with staff as well, with the developer as well. There's been numerous conversations, obviously, with Andrew, Cal, Meredith, zoning and other items with Vanguard. So they've had direct contact with the developer additionally.
Okay. From the staff perspective, either Cal, Meredith, or Andrew, we're okay with, if it's 60 days, we're okay with this new developer as well?
Yes.
Question.
I mean, this was a unique development, being that it was mixed use and you had a use that you had to get in there before the other. Are they aware of all of these complexities? Because it's not as clean as some other developments.
Yeah, daycare, they are out looking for they will continue to own the land. This will be an entity, they will own the apartment buildings as well as the daycare parcel, which is the required commercial component of the development as approved. So they're aware and they're actively working on getting that piece in place for their project.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could emphasize from our going back several months, last year actually, when we did the final approvals, there was concerns about the use of the daycare center and whether or not it would actually be functional They actually, and this is where this particular company is very well capitalized, what they've done is they've decided not to use this as a condominium plan. We were basically gonna be doing individual buildings as condominiums, and the daycare center was a separate unit, and that was your main concern, that, this is gonna be owned externally. They will not be doing a condominium plan for this, it is gonna be one ownership for the entire parcel at this point. So, and they are currently actively in the market with Valley Group to market it. They're doing a build to suit, but we had always marketed it as, you're gonna buy a pad site and you're gonna build it. That's a very challenging, in this particular environment, very challenging to buy a daycare facility that's gonna invest several $1 million in a piece of land and do a vertical on it. They've had a lot of input on it because they're basically going vertical on the building and then just renting the property as an income producing property then.
Because I know I had the unique privilege of being involved in the zoning part of it and then approving it as a supervisor.
This is an early night.
Yeah, but it's, I guess, as long as Vanguard is understanding of the real intricate components of the approval, which is that there's a daycare center there based on the parking and based on the use and based on the ordinance as it currently exists, because that particular overlay no longer exists.
Correct. Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt, that's actually one of the conversations that we've had, is where they understand that the daycare center is unique. We've had, well, I would go with Andrew and Cal and with Meredith on it, is there's really not even, the question was gonna be is how do you appeal to try to get a different use when that overlay doesn't exist? So you're really not, there's no, you don't, so. So it's locked and loaded at this point.
Okay. Jim?
Something? Yeah, so you're saying 60 days, wouldn't 45 be enough?
I'd rather not cut it short,
All right, well, okay.
15 days when it comes to it at this point here.
It's going to get messy quickly.
Yeah, okay, I thought the 2 weeks is okay, but I think what we don't want to see you back for another one of these.
And I'll put that on the record that we will not request an additional extension.
I'm going to do you one better, Jeff, and I'm going to amend the motion to be that the Twin Ponds portion of that will be an additional 60 days with no further extensions provided by the board.
Okay, I'm good with that, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
That condition you can live with as well?
Without a doubt.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion. This is super fun. Motion to authorize the extension of time limitations for the recording of docket 2334 for additional 120 days ending October 4th, 2025. Docket 2023, the Twin Ponds mixed use for an additional 60 days ending August 27th, 2025, with no additional extensions to be provided. And docket 2357, XPO Logistics for an additional 120 days ending August 31st, 2025. Is there a second for the amendment? Okay, so that's been, we've made a motion, we seconded it, we made another motion, we amended the first motion, and that's been seconded. I don't think we have to have further conversations or comment from the audience on this. Seeing none, I'm going to close the question and call for a vote. We're going to keep it as tight with all three since I think we're there. All those in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Nate, good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, I feel better about that.
I do too.
Good. B, authorizing sanitary sewer system valuation study. A lot of essence, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also kind of going along with township staff looking at future township capital needs. And also where we could monetize any of our assets. PFM and another company have provided us proposals to look at the sanitary sewer system. I guess that's okay, we still there. PFM scenario looks at 8 different possibilities of what the sanitary sewer system might be worth and how we can access some of that, capital. So, looking at both proposals, we feel that the PFM proposal is the best choice. Yeah, we're not committing to doing anything with sanitary sewer system. We're not here to ask the board to lease it out, sell it out, form new authorities, do anything with it. We're just trying to see what our options
Have to have, based on the last vote, can we get a little bit of a discount or is this?
We did. I called them back and they did lower their price.
I'm kidding.
All right, I'm going to start this by saying I'm going to make a motion to authorize the township manager to execute a contract with PFM Financial Advisors for the sanitary sewer system options review at a cost of $37,000. Can I get that second? Anybody? We can't talk about it unless someone seconds it.
You're not gonna do it?
I'm not gonna say it. You know that.
So,
You know how I feel about this.
I know how, and actually, this is a very rare situation where maybe you might agree. where-
You don't even wanna talk about it, because I need a second to even talk about it.
I'll make a second to talk about it,
That's all I'm saying.
but I'm not making a second to commit to saying yes or no.
I didn't ask you to.
All right,
All
okay.
I asked is that we can open it up so Jamie can come talk to us again. And we can ask some questions, and allow the two of you to voice your obvious discomfort with the concept and see where it goes. So Jamie, I think we have the presentation in the packet. I needed to ask some questions about timing. Because based on, can you get this done by June 10th?
No.
Okay. I understand, generally speaking, what you're looking for, that the commitment is not to say we have to do one thing or other, but it's to provide us with an evaluation of what value we may be able to get from this particular asset, which is the sanitary sewer system that currently Upper McKenzie operates on its own expense and time.
Correct.
Do you have a framework or an idea of how long it's gonna take?
As long as you want us to take. But I mean, yes, we can, part of the evaluation comes from a number of things. You might recall, last year, we actually worked through the rate study associated with the sewer system. So we have a significant amount of information already to start part of the process, which is good news. When you have 8 different options, we're gonna need additional information that's gonna come from engineers, staff, and other folks. I believe, just given some of the staff work, I'm not the one doing this, by the way, just want to throw it out there. Don't do so much for you. But we have a staff that does these type of works for both locally and national municipalities. The person that would handle most of it was the person that actually worked on the rate study, Ben Kappenstein. So you asked me a question, how long will it take? It will take a few months to do. If you tell us that start on it and, take some time to get the information from the various parties, it may take a little bit longer. Our goal would be to have a, large report available to you, easily understood. We would publicly present it how you would like. We would look at all the alternatives, and there are several. We obviously have experience working with local governments who have done the potential sale of the asset. We have done ones that have looked at it and said we don't want to do it. We've had some that have done leases. We've had some that set up separate authorities. These are all the alternatives that local governments have. There's rules that have changed over the last year or so from the PUC, and those will be followed as part of this process. So to your question of you don't have to make any decisions on what you're doing, I believe this is a prudent thing to do as a municipality that has an asset. You should look at what it is all about and what it can be worth, because you have a significant amount of capital needs, and you may want to determine, is there a different alternative type of services you want to do or not do? So I believe this is no different than you establishing a policy for fund balance or investment. This is just a check on the things that you can do, give you an idea of making some decisions. I am agnostic to the decision that you ultimately make, but we want to make sure you have the information that is suitable for you and the public.
So I'm saying 6 options, not 8.
6, I don't know. It's one of them is not to do anything, by the way.
Yeah, no, I just.
He said 8. I was. Yeah.
I want, for the benefit of those who stayed, I want to review what the options that you're looking at, just so it's not something that I'm looking at, no one else. Option 1 would be to do nothing. Option 2 would be to set up a lease back with the newly created municipal authority.
By the way, I looked at
With the what?
So, well, you just made it sound like you were the only one that looked.
They are looking at it, right? I've got the book in front of me that the public doesn't. I believe that you looked at it. And you too, Sonny, I know you looked at it as well. Option 3 would be to set up a new regional authority. Option 4 would be to sell to an existing regional authority for the LCA. Option 5, lease to a regional authority or private concessionaire. And option 6 would be private sale. So it's a gamut of do nothing to sell to the highest bidder. Okay.
And within the rules and considerations that are under Pennsylvania.
So at its core, it's finding a value to the sewer system that we have spent a lot of money on and a lot of time, and we spend every day a lot of money and time maintaining, and seeing if it's in our best interest to push that out or keep that in. Okay. questions? Sonny?
So what's the current, you said
The final statement was pretty interesting. We didn't talk about that we get a revenue from it as well, but that's okay, go ahead, Sonny.
That is the do nothing, right? You see the revenue.
That we actually generate a revenue from the sewer, the collections piece of the
Yeah.
distribution piece. Go ahead, Sonny, I'm sorry.
So I mean, is the cost of the study is 37,000? Is that the discounted price you just said? Or is it? Okay.
And that's an asset, it's only an asset until we sell it, then it's an asset gone. You can't appreciate, you can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out what the timing looks like. If you say we're 2 months, 3 months out?
Yeah, I mean, the way I would think about this is you're gonna start your budget process one way or the other. I think you probably wanna have information available to you to think about what your tools are in the toolbox. You know, that's the way I would think about it,
Yeah.
toward that process.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm not sold on the idea right now. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I asked for information, you provided, and I reviewed all of that information. It didn't, sell me to go ahead and do it. And actually with that kind of money, I guess, I'm not just saying this to Mr. Keller is here, but, I'd rather use that money to fund a pilot study for sound cameras to go after J-breakers.
Here's the thing, you can't. Comes out of the sewer.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, well, okay, that's fair. Yeah, it comes out of separate fund. Okay, you're right. That's about, I keep forgetting that.
At the end of the day.
I'd like to be able to use that money too from.
Yeah, you're right.
At the end of the day, a 99-year lease is multiple generations in terms of this, so
Again, the idea is to see all the options, pros and cons. That's
Yeah.
really what the goal here is.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a valid point. But I guess the issue is in the timing, that we're gonna be making the bond decision well in advance of this, right?
I wouldn't tie the two together.
Yeah.
It's not, the timing of being here at this meeting worked that way, but if it wasn't, one's not related to the other.
Okay.
And, it may turn out that if it's a lease option, that's the best option for us. It might be something that helps us either pay the bond issuance debt service over the course of years, so it's a zero-sum game, or it might turn out to be that we are able to do a defeasement with.
if you lease it, can you use it on something else?
Yes.
And then we'd also potentially have access to the $25 million in our sewer fund that then could be used for other things because we no longer have to spend that money. So, or we can, play and shift. So, for
It's 37 grand to get the study done.
yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
But it's also 37 that could potentially unlock our ability to explore alternatives that, at some point, it's been 12 years since there's been a tax raise in Upper Mackenzie. I hate to use that word out loud, or those two words out loud. We have some other expenses and some other services that are coming as we grow. There's more expense going into the sewer system as we grow. There's some big numbers coming up as we grow. Understanding the value of money, and let me ask you this way, can the 37 come from the sewer fund?
Yeah. that's
37, yeah.
Right, so the 37,000 from our $25 million sewer fund.
Actually, 29.
Sorry, I'll rephrase. The $37,000 coming from our $29 million sewer fund, in order to explore whether or not we can completely change the finances of what we're doing here, to me, is a worthwhile expense. It's not committing us to do anything, because if you look in the packet, which you both did, there are examples of townships that spent this money and decided the best thing we do is not.
How do you think the 29 million got in the sewer?
Jim, I'm well aware that we're
How
generating.
do you think the 29 million got in the sewer fund?
I know,
Okay,
but
so
I
just
want-
think about it.
I am. But
You
I'm
get to
also-
do it once.
I'm not committing to any action
You get to do it
other
once.
than evaluating whether the action is worthwhile. And I think to figure out if a year from now, or 10 years from now, or 2 years from now, we have an evaluation and we have someone willing to do something that helps us pay for all the things that this township will eventually need, and it costs us less than 1%, less than 0.1% of the sewer fund, in order to explore our options, I think that's an expenditure that's worthwhile to determine. And we may come back 2 months from now and you have a great presentation and everyone here says no. I'm still okay with the expenditure because I made an informed decision. Rather than, and I know we're generating money, and I know the sewer fund is self-sufficient at this point, but we are also coming up on Klein's Island things and Regional 357 thing.
All I'm gonna say is based on my experience and what I do day to day.
And I trust you on that.
I see more municipalities, or not municipalities, but communities suffer when it's not the municipality that's, go to Exeter. Ask them what they pay a month for water,
And I have
a month.
I have concern about
It's
if
a
we,
car payment every
if
month.
we sell or lease what those,
So-
our ability to control those things. I still would like.
We
to-
won't have it. They go to the PUC, make a case, and they get it.
I still would like to have some evaluation of how much potential is there so that we're making a decision that's based on actual numbers rather than a guess. That's my position on it.
Question, probably for you. So let's say we take some of these funding options and then we get the lease back or whatever. Does that money stay in the sewer fund or does it go somewhere else?
It's available for the general.
So in a way, it's a way to convert money from the sewer fund and use it for other purposes.
Again, it's options. Maybe the best option is to do nothing. Maybe it's to reform the authority and loan back to us. It's looking at options. It's not agreeing.
So you want to move forward with a study. It's a study.
I think studies to make an informed decision when we're talking about something that could generate between $1 and $1 million and $50 million is worth our while. And I understand Jim's position, and as you all defer to me from time to time on what I do for a living, I defer to you, and I defer to you on what you do to a living. But I prefer to make decisions with information in hand. And for what if you can make it $37, it's a no-brainer. But you know, for a cost with a known trusted vendor who is not invested in the outcome, to figure out what options are available for us when we're talking. We're going to have a meeting on Tuesday about borrowing, a 10-figure sum. I think we owe it to our constituents to also explore monetizing our current assets and figure out if it makes sense or not.
The only thing that and you're right about if it were $37. $37,000 for me is a secondary project manager for half a year, 1,040 hours. And I'm just trying to come up with, it's $37,000, and I'm not happy about the concepts in the first place. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
that's fine.
So it's 1,040,
yeah.
Just
No,
you guys,
yeah.
But you look at this, you're probably gonna contact potential buyers for option 5. That would be Veolia, Aqua, or whatever, and see.
No, we would, well, there's methods of how you figure out the value of them on the private and public side. So there's market value, there's income value, and there's other methods of doing it. We use all of those. We're using market data from other processes that we've done with other places. Usually when municipalities do this type of thing, they look at a couple of options. They say, what's the price to sell and what's the price to lease or do nothing? We've now expanded it to everything here, and I think that's of value to you. So I agree with you that you have to make a decision on the concept of control eventually if you want to do that. But that's not the conversation that we're supposed to have. This is exactly what you said. It's a information ability for you to make decisions today, tomorrow, or in the future, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
It's good.
I'm on the fence, but
Well, I'm more about to get more questions before I put it out to anybody else asking questions. Good.
yeah, no, I'm good with that.
Okay. So does anybody from the public have a question to us or to Jamie about this concept? Mike?
Yeah, sure. I own a property in Talmincing Township. There was a big to-do about the sewer selling. I don't know whether you were involved in that.
I was not.
Whatever else, but it turned into a big, bigger than your noise ordinance that happened. Okay, so just be careful opening up Pandora's box. I understand what you want to do, Jeff, but it is, you may be opening up Pandora's box here. Just be cautious. That's my only comment.
With the study, Mike, we're not committing anything.
I know
No
you're not
information.
committing anything, but it's the first step in, and you spent the $37,000. And is it something you truly want to do?
Yep, understood. Any other questions or concerns?
Nay.
Okay.
Boy, I haven't been so following me.
You should still laugh.
I know a lot of these votes before they happen. And the fact that I couldn't even get a second for the motion, I have a pretty good idea where this is gonna go. With that, I'm gonna close the question and move to a vote. So all those in favor of the motion authorizing the township manager to execute a contract with PFM Financial Advisors for sanitary sewer systems options review at a cost of $37,000, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
So as vote 1 to 2, nays have it, and that has failed. Jamie, thanks for your time, and I appreciate it.
We do thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Gentlemen, I want to go on the record that we finally agreed on something, and we gotta give me one now.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sleep tonight. I don't know.
You owe me one now.
We're gonna go back to the noise. Motion C, appointing Larry Worsham as a regular member and Adil Ahmad as an alternate member to the zoning hearing board. Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a current vacancy for a regular membership on our zoning hearing board, and we have an current alternate, Larry Worsham, who has been serving for a couple of years now, and he has had great attendance and is engaged at the meetings, and staff is recommending that he be moved from alternate to the regular membership. And in conjunction with that, we also interviewed a new candidate that would then fill that vacancy of an alternate, Adil Ahmad. Staff interviewed him, and as well as the zoning hearing board chairman, and we all were in agreement that we feel he would be a good fit. In addition, he did meet a few of the board of supervisors members in an executive session as well. So with that, we do recommend that the motion be passed as presented.
I'll go. Yeah, the motion to appoint Larry Worsham as a regular member to the Upper McCountry Township Zoning Hearing Board, filling a vacancy with an unexpired term ending December 31st, 2028, and appointing Adil Ahmad as a alternate member, filling a vacancy with an unexpired term ending December 3rd, 2025. This year. Okay.
I'll second the motion. Questions or concerns? Sonny?
No.
Tim?
No, sir.
I have none. Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to appoint Larry Worsham as a regular member of the zoning hearing board and Adil Ahmad as an alternate member, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Motion D, authorizing establishment of an internal controls policy. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This kind of goes back to those two resolutions passed earlier. 2024, the board authorized the internal controls audit. I believe it was Irvine and Company, those are associates, Michelle, I don't know. They provided us with basically an evaluation of how we conduct a day-to-day business, along with basically a comment letter on how we could do better. I combined both those documents into what you have now, which further moves us forward. It's not where we need to be. A lot of that will change in the coming months with the full implementation of Tyler, but it does provide, again, staff specific guidelines on how we're expected to operate. Again, most of it we have been doing. We did make some improvements, and we'll continue to move further along. There is money in the 25 budget to further evaluate that and make another site visit with an assessment.
I make a motion to authorize the establishment of an internal controls policy.
I'll make a second to that. Questions? Sonny?
No.
Jim?
No, I'm good.
Anyone in the audience have a question about the internal controls policy that's been proposed?
Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of authorizing, all those in favor of the motion to authorize the establishment of an internal controls policy, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Bob.
You?
Motion E is authorizing an update to the township purchasing policy. Let's see.
Pretty much you did, right?
Yeah, I know.
Pretty much you did,
Pretty much. This is township's purchasing policy that the first manager put into place, I believe, in 2015. Formalized a little bit better how we conducted our purchasing here. But again, with Tyler and just with the internal controls policy, it was due for an update. So that policy is also here for your consideration.
I'll make a motion to authorize an update to the township purchasing policy.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jim. Questions, Sonny?
Yeah, I had a couple questions on that one. One was, I guess, there was a reference to the assistant finance manager and the finance manager. And I'm just wondering, given with the recent changes with staff and retirements and all that, is that still applicable?
We'll probably change the assistant manager to staff accountant. That's the budgeted replacement.
That's what, yeah. So you're gonna make those changes then, or you wanna keep it as it is, or what were you thinking?
I will make those changes. This will also probably come back after the internal controls policies that are updated. So I think for now we're fine.
All right, you know, the other, and since purchasing is part of my background, so I was just the only other thought I had was on RFQ for professional services. There was a reference to, RFQing, even though it's not required, but sometimes we do, it said for larger contracts, but it didn't really define what larger contracts were, so to me, it seemed a little open-ended.
It is. I don't know if we could practically put a dollar value on it. You may want to go out for an RFP on uniform service, which might be worth $10,000.
Okay, I mean, maybe you wanna just change it then to the discretion of the township manager or something. It's up to you, but that just seemed to me when I read it, it seemed a little, a little loose.
We could put it to the township manager or the finance manager.
All right, it's up to you. That was my only two comments, and I didn't have strong opinions on them, but just wanted to provide some review. That was it.
So are we in a position to do that change tonight, or are we?
It's up to, I mean, it's up to you guys. I would just.
Or are you okay as is? Because it's sort of built in with the idea of an undefined term as of discretion.
I'm okay as is. It was just some things that popped in my head when I read it.
Yeah, and
It's worth what's.
yeah, 100%. And again, it's going to be hopefully practice even after I'm gone, that these policies won't just dust up on a shelf, that they get used, they'll get reviewed, and they will be periodically updated.
I like the idea that you think you're allowed to leave. Questions or concerns from anyone else? Seeing that, I guess, unless, Jim, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Sonny, you all good?
No, those were the only two. They were minor.
Okay. So we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to authorize an update to the township purchasing policy, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
We are on to motion F, authorizing an update to the employee handbook. Where's Greta?
Watching.
Right.
Watching on YouTube.
Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this kind of relates back to the internal controls policy and the purchasing policy where it references travel policy. So we had to update the handbook to match back to the other two policies. While we were doing that, we also needed to update the fire inspectors' hours of work since they moved to 12-hour shifts. So their meal times, break times, all their PTO time needed to be brought more in line. We actually followed the police contract. So that update is also included.
I'll make a motion to authorize an update to several sections of the employee handbook, including meal breaks, inventory time, overtime, reserve holidays, and travel.
Also,
Thank you. Pete, you're good with these? You played a part in drafting these for your team? Okay. We'll be trying to make that quieter so no one can hear you.
you were talking to me.
Sonny, any questions?
No.
Jim?
No, I'm good.
Anyone from the audience have questions about how we pay and
give lunch to our firemen. All right, seeing none, we can move to the vote. All those in favor of the motion to authorize the employee handbook, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Thank you, Pete, for your kind words. Motion G, authorizing a group of citizens, Vogelsville, PA 18051 Inc., to repair the picnic pavilion. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Down at I still call it the Boy Scout camp, down by the Applewood pump station.
I think Mike still calls it the Boy Scout camp too, as a matter of fact.
Per their release agreement, before they can do anything to any of their buildings down there, board supervisor approval is needed.
Actually,
It's a covenant. And there was a deal with the Jan Lane Company, how they swap things out. But anyhow, it's certainly not a problem for them to improve their picnic area. This is just a formality, if you will. We can tell them they would still need appropriate permits, but I think they're fine fixing up their, basically the picnic room.
Make a motion to authorize a group of citizens, Vogelsville, PA, Inc., to construct miscellaneous improvements to their picnic area as outlined in their letter dated May 1st, 2025, conditioned upon all necessary township permits being obtained prior to the start of the work.
I'll second that. Questions or concerns? None. Anybody here from that group? Oh, now I'm gonna deny it. I want to hear the defendant. Any from the audience have questions about that? Seeing none, we can move to the vote. All those in favor of the motion to authorize group of citizens, Vogelsville, PA 18051, to conduct miscellaneous improvements to their picnic area, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Bob. Motion H, updating the authorization of sale of alcoholic beverages at township run events to include Grub and Groove at Grange Park. Ryan.
So thank you. Back in January, we came before you for recreation launch scale events with a list of events for the year that we have township vendors who like to do alcohol sales. Grub at Grange was not part of that list because it came online afterwards, and we're just asking for that to be added to the list with the exact same requirements we follow for all other events.
Anybody but me? I'll make a motion to authorize to serve alcohol at the township run event Grub and Groove at Grange Park, conditioned upon completion by the selected vendors of Upper McCutcheon Township certificate of insurance alcohol liability requirements, proof of responsible alcohol management program employee certifications, and proof of Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board exposition permits, all be verified and to the satisfaction of township staff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sonny. Concerns, questions?
Just question that, when is this gonna happen?
So the Grub and Groove at Grange is every Thursday. We started back in May through the end of September.
Okay.
Since we've been advertising, we do have a couple of township businesses who have asked to be a part of that, and since it wasn't part of the list, I wanted to.
Okay, because we were having it, but we didn't serve alcohol then, and now we're serving, because that's why, because I remember seeing this on Facebook and stuff, and I thought, wait a minute, that's why I asked. Like,
We didn't because we did not come before you.
okay, I got you. So now we're doing it for the future. Okay, that's all.
Just a complete list, Doug, how was it tonight?
Excellent.
All right.
Ice cream and food trucks, I can't go wrong.
Brian, do we have any idea how many people are generally attending? I know the weather is very much a factor.
Yep, so we were a little slow in May and we had to cancel one due to weather. The last two, I'd probably say somewhere between 200 to 300 picking up. We did have one with a musical vendor, which added to it. I can tell you when I started sending people up today at 4 o'clock, there were people coming over to sit in the pavilion waiting for trucks to be ready to send. We're averaging about 12 trucks a night, and we have a total of 20 vendors at this point in time, with a lot reaching out to us to continue.
Okay, great.
Questions or concerns about
As I
this?
see you're nodding with P, I will say too, our police department has come and taken a look. And last week I saw about 2 or 3 officer vehicles engaging with the public and dealing with this.
It's a great event, Ryan. It's a fantastic event, delicious.
Are they watching people or watching the food?
They're engaging with the public.
Well said. Any other questions or concerns, other than this is a great, I love that we're doing something on the regular that invites people to our park system, and this is a great idea, and I'm glad it's working well. If there's no other comment, we can move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to authorize vendors at Grub and Groove at Grange Park to serve alcohol, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Serve away.
Motion I, authorize the sale of township vehicles, my favorite part of the night. Scott Pepps.
Public Works has two pieces of equipment, replacing. We have two townships that put out for business for our trucks. So I'm looking for a motion to authorize the sale of those vehicles. These are not bid because they're being sold to other municipalities. They are above trade-in prices.
Okay. Man of many words. I'll motion to authorize the sale of a 2016 Ford F-350 to South Manheim Township at a price of $28,000 and a 2015 John Deere backhoe to Upper Milford Township at a price of $38,500.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions, Sonny?
No, no questions.
Jim?
No, I'm good.
I'm good as well. Anybody from the public have questions of Scott? It's your one chance. You haven't talked much otherwise. Seeing none, we can move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to authorize the sale of these two vehicles, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We're up to the board and staff reports. Monthly department reports available at the back of the room have been posted at township websites. Are there any department managers who have anything specific they'd like to announce? We can start with Pete.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maybe the mic and everything.
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Bob.
All dressed up and nowhere to go, boys. Come on.
It's late. Jess.
I do have a couple things, so I'm sorry. But it's not as heavy as everything else we've talked here about here, so it's a little bit lighter. I do want to start by stating that we did have two executive sessions. One was held on May 29th at 5 p.m. related to personnel, and one today at 5 p.m. Related to legal matters. On that, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that did take time and participated in our mascot survey. We do have the results. We're still tallying them out. I will be working with Ryan, and we will be getting out another survey after we get the information, and so we can get a better vote onto what that mascot can possibly look like in the future to represent our township further in our events and everything. And with that, I just wanted to mention that last year I was provided with a task by Bob to create a township flag. It was created last year. We took it to PSATS last year. We took it to PSATS this year. And this month we actually have it in the meeting room. So the township officially does have its flag on display in the meeting room. And there will be a campaign that will be coming out during the month of June just to get more engagement with our app. Remember, it is on Apple and it is on Google, the Play Store. You can go on there, you can get your information, quick Q&As, as well as you can go ahead and if there is any service request, you can go ahead and do that through the app and it goes directly to the department that needs to, and you will have full visibility of where it's at. Also with that, last month, we had 89% engagement rate. What this means is that our messages, our emails are going out, people are engaging with them, clicking on those links. So we are keeping our residents and surrounding members informed. In the month of April, we had 59 new subscribers, and in May, we had 80 new subscribers. So our subscriber list continues to grow. And if you guys have any concerns or any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And that is all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Guys, on behalf of Sonny and Jim, I'd like to thank you for all the efforts that you and your team are putting into the outreach. That's really important to all of us, and it's really impressive the results that you're getting. Keep up the good work. Keep moving us forward. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Cal.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Meredith.
I feel like I exhausted all of my updates a little while ago, but for anybody who wasn't here at 5:30, we had our first zoning rewrite workshop, and we're going to continue to have those before the BOS meetings in the future. So the next one that's up, I believe, is signs. That's what we'll be reviewing on July 3rd.
And I think we're going to call that one at 6 instead of 5:30,
Sounds good.
right? Because it's not as big as the map.
Nothing will be as big as that.
All right. Andrew.
The only thing I would have to add is that last month, I believe we had discussed the township's acquisition of an additional property, and that's going to, settlement is scheduled for tomorrow at noon, so that property will be in the township's name tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this month we have 4 submissions on the PC agenda in 2 weeks. 2 of them are land developments, 1 is a waiver letter, and 1 is a land development in North Mackenzie Township as a courtesy review. We're also continuing to work with the township on the VSAP assessment, which we discussed last month. We're hoping to have final recommendations and like a 5-year capital improvement plan presented to the township staff by the end of July. So we have people looking at some of the connectivity issues in the field, and we have our own thoughts on what the VSAP plan had. We're also assisting with the Applewood pump station, and we're just starting to get our feet wet with the Adams Road interchange and the potential transportation improvements needed to accommodate and accompany that.
What are we doing at Applewood?
Enforcement.
Force main running.
I got you.
Yep. in
Not
and
the,
around that.
not the pump station.
Force main. Right.
And you've been involved with Meredith as well, and have you thrown your eyes on the ordinance changes
For the zoning?
or zoning?
Yeah, our planners are involved with that, not me personally, but
Well,
yeah.
No, I just want to make sure, because I saw.
I had
So- No, go ahead.
Okay, now I had one question, because things related to a recent accident, I think, but there was the Russell Road railroad crossing. I believe that there were improvements on the tip for that, greater visibility and so forth. And I know there was just recently an accident. Do you know where we stand on that? Because is there anything that we can do to?
On the tip, I think that is earmarked for 2035. It's way out.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Which, there's 2 Ruppsville.
It's the one near the John Deere.
Oh, by the John Deere, yes.
That was actually when I was on the Good Neighbor Coalition. We identified. The chief of the police did a great job of doing a study on all of the railroad crossings, and that was the one crossing that was identified for possible improvement. And just given that we had that, incident, it occurred to me that, that maybe there's some more, maybe we could look at that, see if we could do something better.
Understood, we currently are not looking at that, but if the township would like us to.
It's up to you. I just like I said, we had a recent incident that it worked. It's already on the tip. I don't.
That's Norfolk Southern project?
Yeah, I know that takes I know what you're
Yeah,
saying.
the other side of Brooksville down by
Morris
Forrester and Lehigh. That crossing was supposed to be fixed 2 years ago.
It's not it's a tough crossing because of the way the railroads bend. You don't get a lot of visibility. There's not a lot of notification, and people don't realize it, but it is an active, as we just saw, it is an active crossing. And it came up to my attention because I had individuals reach out to me and said they almost got hit. So it is something to look for, especially when you think about the mass of the train and that type of thing. And one more thing too, again, constituent concerns. When we had Keystone, I had brought it up to them. The Bradford pear trees are very invasive, and they're very, very prone to storm damage. And at least on Lehigh Court, there's at least maybe 3 or 4 trees that are just completely down, and everything just grows under them. It becomes like a microforest. So one of the things I was looking to do is to get that species off of our permissible.
Sorry, which tree?
Bradford pears.
Calorie? Not Bradford. Okay, because we removed calorie pear when we did the last update.
Yeah, but that's essentially a Bradford pear, I think. I think it's the same type of species.
If that's the same one, then it was removed when we did the Saldo update, the Saldo amendment just recently.
Just recently.
That came off the list.
Did it? Because the last time I checked was not that long ago, and it was still there.
It was the most recent update, so it's just.
Okay, I'll check again.
Yeah.
If you got it, that's great. 'Cause
The
that's a pet
online
peeve.
version of that just became part of the online codified, probably
Just a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay. Well, that's good news. Thank you. That was fast. That's all I have.
Scott? Something. Michelle? Ryan?
Just a quick program update. So all of our spring, summer programs have filled, specifically our Little Athletics, our 2 to 6-year-old multi-sport program, and our summer camp program. Mighty Kick Soccer continues to do well. We just completed our Luck of the Draw pickleball tournament on Saturday the 17th with about 70 participants, and we have about 65 in our beginner pickleball lessons that we offer. For our Cape Brook Green Hills Park movie in the park, we did move to a rain date with weather, but we still are approximately about 150 people for a new event at that park offsite facility. Which our next movie in the park is Friday the 13th, not the movie, the date, at Ricky Park, and we are showing 1 and 2. So pre-movie activities start at 5:30, and the movie will start at dusk. As we've mentioned before, some of our programs are moving to various park facilities and not keeping everything in one set location. Our first concert in the park had to be postponed due to weather this past weekend with the way the wet conditions and cold conditions were. So we are working with our vendors to reschedule that. But our next upcoming concert is the end of the month on June 28th. And we have the Dave Coster Band at 6 o'clock and the Kelly Bell Band, which is we voted the 12-time Best Mid-Atlantic Blues Rock Band in the Mid-Atlantic region, coming on the 28th along with food trucks and all the other vendors. So hopefully that will be the concert series for the summer and make Doug happy that I promised this a year ago that we would improve upon that. And our biggest program starting on the 16th is our summer camp program. In our 4th year, we are maxed out. We have approximately 6 spots for counseling and training, our 13 and 15-year-olds. But Emily and Michaela, our summer camp coordinator, held their first round of training sessions this past week and included new topics such as de-escalation and awareness with kids for mental health and things like that into the training repertoire. Also on my report, I had the summer camp field trips, as we mentioned before. We're dipping into taking kids from the summer camp out to various field trips. We're doing about 30 per site allotted. It gives you kind of the numbers. Lead on the clubhouse is the Iron Pigs game, followed by the Gorilla Factory, and then Da Vinci Science Center. Emily's done a great job working with the busing company and ticket costs that we are covering all of our expenses to take the kids off-site to these trips, so it's not an additional expense to the program. Park and Rec Board was active last month with project updates, facilities, coming events and programs. We talked a little bit about some design standards and recommendations from the comprehensive park record and space plan that will be forthcoming. And that's pretty much it. All done.
Thank you, sir. Sunny? No. Jim? Nothing from me, so we go to public comment or courtesy of the floor. Mr. Boos.
Chairman, Fleischer, sorry if I'm butchering your name, members of the board, my name is Patrick H. Foos, and I reside at 6123 Palomino Drive, Allentown, PA 18106. First, let me express how proud I am to call Upper Macungie Township my home. From the beauty of Grange Park to the vibrant community events held throughout the year. This is a township that thrives on connection, inclusivity, and progress. We are part of an outstanding school district, and our population continues to grow at a remarkable pace, a reflection of how desirable this area has become. It is with that same pride and forward-looking spirit that I come before you tonight to formally request that Upper Macungie Township be reclassified as a first-class township. Given our size, growth, and complexity, it is both reasonable and necessary that we adopt a Board of Commissioners structure with alternating four-year terms. This form of governance would better reflect the needs and voices of our diverse and expanding population. Greater representation leads to better decisions. Whether we're discussing zoning policies, green space protection, or farmland preservation, these are issues that require broad input and thoughtful oversight. By elevating our township's classification, we can promote more transparent, accountable, and inclusive governance. I urge you to consider this not merely as a procedural change, but as a meaningful step toward ensuring our community remains strong, sustainable, and well represented in the years ahead. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments for the floor? Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Scott Keller. I live in Nelson Drive right down the street. Mr. Chairman, I have two versions of what I have to say. I have a 45-minute version and a 3-minute version. Which one would you like?
I'd prefer the 3-minute, if that's okay with you.
You got it. Okay, prepared.
Good.
So my objective in the next 2 to 3 minutes is to restate for the record that Jake brake noise on Stones Road from the trucks is still an issue. At times, it's much worse than it was a year ago when I stood here at this podium. At that time, we had a team of people that spoke with over 100 residents. We distilled their input down to a 2-page, 5-minute presentation that we did at this meeting over a year ago. All those signatures are on file with the Country Township. Our noise ordinance states that, quote, potential sources of noise pollution can impact the quality of life and the public health, safety, and welfare of the township, and are striving to mitigate noise pollution within the community. This is not a potential source of noise. This is a lot of noise, like right now. It's not potential, we're living through. Last year we had 3 action items from that meeting and all that work we did. First one was short term, enforce the area, which Lieutenant Reeder and his team did extremely well. By the way, if you guys have any extra time, please come down to the bottom of Shaw's Road. We're gonna need your help, especially at night. It's really bad. Lieutenant Reeder sat down there for I don't know how long, several days. Those trucks were quiet as church knocks. Didn't hear them drive by. His team left the area, the noise came right back. So the truckers know what they're doing. I'd like to take this opportunity to also say that we recognize trucks as a very important part of our ecosystem. We're not saying get rid of the trucks. We're saying to find a way to coexist with the trucks, to not degrade our quality of life. It's very important to us. Our second objective from back then was longer term. I was going to go off and study. For the record, I have a master's degree in electrical engineering from Indiana University. I was in the semiconductor business for 41 years. I know I don't look today, we're 29, but I was in there for 41 years as an electrical engineer. So I'm qualified to review the specifications. I'm by no stretch of the imagination a noise expert in any way, shape, or form. My conclusion after several months of reading and studying was that the specification was so thick and complex, it's extremely impractical for a group of citizens to run a test and gather data that we could then take to PennDOT and them to accept it to be valid data. Because, you know, the way the spec is written, you have to go out on the road, you have to set up obstacles, it's just too messy. We cannot do that without the help of a professional organization. So the 3 action items we had, we completed about 1.5 of them. Of course, the third one was to go to PennDOT, clearly define what we need. We couldn't do that because we couldn't get the data. So here we are. The noise is the same, sometimes worse. We'd like to refocus some energy on this issue, okay? Because it's not getting any better. Our noise ordinance states that noise generated from the engine of a motor vehicle is exempt. So that doesn't cover this. We did that on purpose. We thought it was too complex. A year ago, we said, should we throw in the Jake brakes to the noise ordinance? The answer was no. We got that. The 100 or so citizens we spoke to, they understood. They said, let's set it aside and go after it in the right way when the time comes. So, personally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some research in bigger cities. Traffic noise, not noise, traffic noise. I have some friends in the inner city of Philadelphia that work on some of this stuff in New York City. They manage traffic noise much worse than what we have. We need to learn how they manage it, when they manage it, maybe even ideally have them come here and teach us how they manage it. This is a long-term project. I don't expect anything to happen in the next couple of weeks. But we have to start learning how to control this. We can't just let it run wild because it's just not a good way to live. Lastly, Jake Brake Vehicle Systems, the company that invented Jake Brakes. Called them a few times and never got any callbacks. They claim that Jake brakes on compliant trucks are not a noise issue. I believe them. I read this. I read their specification. I read their data results. I believe them. They're correct. They did it the right way. they follow EPA standards on noise. It's perfect. So I agree with them. But they also have data that says and concludes that non-compliant trucks are 60 times noisier than compliant trucks. Non-compliant trucks operate at noise levels dangerous to the human ear. They have the data that shows this. So the trucks causing these issues are non-compliant. As verified by Lieutenant Reeder's team last year, where they were pulling over trucks left and right, and most of them were non-compliant, the noisy ones. I guess I don't understand, because I'm not involved, why so many non-compliant trucks can be running on this road. I'm only talking about an area from this township building to Getza service station. That's all I'm talking about. It's for this input. Of course, if we do the solution right, it'll be scalable. I'm not thinking about just Shaw's Road. We just have to let it scale up to the whole township if we can. It's a statewide problem. It's a countrywide problem. You can read about it all over the country. And somebody's managing it, so we have to learn how they're doing it. And I ran over my time limit. I apologize. I'm at 5.5 minutes.
Can I add something to this? One of the things that I've noticed, I take shots every day. If I'm going around every day, and it literally is at least one of my directions that I see a truck that's not supposed to be on that road. Over the distance, got a sleeper on it and a trailer. It's constant. It's constant. That would start. I know that it's tough, but
It is, yeah, no, I get it.
and the other day there was one that literally was coming north on Shaw's, and we did 22 miles an hour from Grimm's all the way to the lake. And by the time we got through all that, there was 50 cars behind me. And the whole time I'm thinking, what is he doing on this road in the first place if this is? So
I appreciate the question. And
I am, just that section of road, I definitely see that we have vehicles on there that probably should not be on there. I know you can't be everywhere all the time, but it's definitely.
Yeah, they're on the road the first place they should be, but they're not compliant. There's 3 hot spots. At the bottom of the hill by Grimm's Farm, down by the roundabout, okay? And right here on this hill, where the sign says no brake retarders allowed, right? It's an issue. I don't know how to fix it. I've been trying. So I'm gonna go to the big cities and try to get some more data and, see what we can learn. But
And you did have somebody, a truck pulled over this week.
Sure.
I mean, I'm serious. It was Monday or Tuesday, going to work. Right at the turn, there was a truck pulled over, but
I mean, before, separate from the noise, last year when I stood here, we had full-length tractor trailers doing U-turns on Shaw's Road. Full-length trailers on a 2-lane road, and they couldn't make the turn, so they were driving into that guy's front yard with ruts this deep in the mud. Now, on a positive note, there are barriers there now, so they can't do the U-turn. Maybe they just keep coming up the road. I don't know what they do, but they shouldn't be on the road in the first place. But at nighttime, it's crazy. I guess they think they can sneak through town, but nobody's seeing them, and they have no consideration for the noise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think
it will certainly, sorry, when that development starts to get populated, you're gonna have a lot more people, because I do see right now, there's not many people.
No.
Right, there's.
No. I mean, I rode my bike for 9 miles to get 100 signatures,
Yeah, I mean, there's not, but wait, there's how many houses going in there, and that's.
Yeah.
It's about
That's,
100. I think it's 100.
It's 100 houses, so it will definitely, now they put a berm there, but it's already so far below the roadway that berm, even with trees in it, is not gonna completely eliminate the problem that's gonna happen there, so.
So I know you guys are working hard, but any enforcement, we appreciate it.
So,
And long-term, try to
so what I'm hearing you saying is you're not necessarily complaining about the trucks being there, but the non-compliant noise that.
I think he's complaining about the trucks being there too.
Yeah, I am, I mean.
If he is.
Oh, yeah, if they weren't there, you wouldn't have the noise.
Yeah, I
there,
mean, you know, trucks on Jones Road, this has been discussed for 40 plus years.
If he's not complaining, I am some.
You know, but I guess the question is, how do you fix that? Because you can't have somebody stationed there all the time. I mean, I think the reason what I was getting at, and you're right, I mean, you're complaining about both, but it all comes down to enforcement, right? And this is where the bottom line is that how do you fix it? Because it's not easy to enforce. By the time you call and an officer gets there, they're already gone.
Maybe if we settle the sewer system, we could afford to pick up a new officer, put them down there. And so should we bring that motion back up?
So,
Not to make light of this, but.
yeah, but no, the only reason I was going with it though, I mean, I know we've talked about it, it's been raised in meetings to look at like some technology solutions.
Yeah.
And I'm just bringing it up for that reason, thinking that, you know, given the size of our township, how fast we're growing, and the challenges that we have, then we might want to be on the forefront of some technology to look at it, like the noise cameras and whatever. Even if we did a pilot.
I mean, full disclosure, I've done some reading on, and I've actually contacted the office, I forget the representative's name, down in Philly. They've been up for 9 months trial, they turned them on last month, now you get a citation, it sits above the red light. Somebody makes noise, you get a ticket in the mail, bottom line. Yeah, that's a great solution, I don't know how much it costs, I don't know what it took to implement it.
It's legal. It's like there's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are allowed to use cameras for traffic issues. No one else is. We've looked at this a little bit and we're trying to figure out on the pilot side, and I think we've got sort of a legal opinion that the answer is don't know.
Oh, okay.
So
you guys are stepping ahead of me then.
yeah, so, well, let's call it half step ahead of you, but, some of those conversations that you're hoping are happening, but we're in a real weird spot because of the way the rules are in Pennsylvania about what we're allowed to do. I mean, our radar and cameras for speed enforcement, we're restricted because we're not the big city to do it. So part of that is trying to thread this needle of what we're allowed to do by law, because the last thing we want to do is spend $250,000 on a system only to have one guy challenge it and we lose and we get taken down.
So no, it's great. I mean, I'm thrilled to hear you guys are working on that kind of thing.
So, I mean, but you said something that Philly's already doing it, right?
Yeah, they had them on the red lights for so long. Nobody got tickets. I guess kind of similar to what we're doing with the handheld phone law. You know, they can pull you over, but you can't get a citation until a year from now. But the noise cameras, what I read, were turned on last month.
So I think we can watch that. Maybe we could, Andrew, you could keep an eye on what's going on in Philly, because if we could find out what they're doing, and if it's enforceable, then we have something.
I'm sorry to forget the gentleman's name, but the representative down there, he's been working on this for 11 years. Okay, what started was the boom boxes on the city blocks, just to get a bunch of noise, and then cars driving around with music is what started. But why not Jake Briggs? Just makes noise. Okay. But they use it for noise coming from traffic. I wasn't aware of barriers. This was only city.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that we have to consider doing forward, and I guess the point is to hear you, and I think the reader hears you, and we're going to try to figure out if it's driving around, making sure that we're sitting there once a week or whatever they can afford to do. We're going to try to keep doing for you, and we'll keep working in the background.
I'm here to help. Send me off to do something, read something, go someplace.
Be prepared a 45-minute presentation. We'll do some. We'll figure that out some other day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the public?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll make the second.
All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:52.
How am I signing here?
Coming under the weather.
You're not